I have a zombie assistance system. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301 Appearance. The man rushed towards Brother Cannon with a resolute momentum. He didn't need to kill Brother Cannon directly, and he didn't even need to win. After all, both of them were level 2, and it was not easy to win. But as long as he had a slight advantage, or tied with Brother Cannon, I believe that others would attack Brother Cannon together. At that time, Brother Cannon would be dead. Brother Cannon looked at his opponent rushing over, and a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. Who told you that I'm level 2? After saying that, a violent breath gushed out of his body. Everyone present felt their bodies trembled, and they were also shocked. They didn't expect Brother Cannon to quietly rise to level 3. No wonder he had disdained the masked man who was also level 3 before. A trace of fear flashed in the man's eyes. If he was level 2, he could still fight, but he didn't expect Brother Cannon to be level 3. His current behavior was undoubtedly tantamount to suicide. So, he turned around abruptly and tried to run out. Brother Xiaopao held the soul-breaking knife in his hand. It just so happens that this knife has not seen blood yet, so let's use it to test it on you. After saying that, his figure disappeared from the spot. The next second, Brother Xiaopao suddenly appeared beside the man and exclaimed, "What a good knife. No wonder those people were beheaded in an instant just now." The claws in the man's hand slashed towards Brother Xiaopao, but it was empty. "Finally," he said, "it turns out that you are also a speed type zombie. No wonder you were able to blow up all 4 of them in one go just now. I deserve to die." After saying that, the head fell to the ground. The others were all shocked. They had never seen Brother Xiaopao use speed type abilities before. This was really well hidden. Brother Xiaopao swept the rest of the people with a look of contempt for the world, and then shouted, "Is there anyone else who wants to take action?" The rest of the people were silent and lowered their heads. Brother Xiaopao continued, "Since there is no one, then follow the previous plan and protect me to leave." Suddenly, a terrifying breath came from behind, directly suppressing the whole scene. Even Brother Xiaopao was imprisoned. Then, a figure appeared from behind them, with a little girl standing next to him. The figure was a humanoid crab, with its 2 claws touching the ground, and whispered, "Sand sink." Everyone found that the ground they were standing on actually began to turn into quicksand, and their bodies began to sink. Their eyes were full of anxiety, but they were helpless because their bodies could not move. The little cannon brother at the back snorted coldly, "Are you finally willing to come out? I thought you only dared to hide in the dark and do dirty things." Qiushui did not answer. After trapping everyone, she ended the sand sink and retreated with her sister. He sat in the position where the little cannon brother had been before and slowly appeared, with Wang Qiushui standing next to him. He glanced at Brother Xiaopao. "There's nothing we can do. We've almost seen enough of this internal strife, and it seems there's no way to continue. So naturally it's our turn to take the stage. Also, don't be so calm, otherwise I'll always worry about whether you have a backup plan." Brother Xiaopao shook his head in the face of absolute strength. "What's the use of a backup plan? If I'm not mistaken, the one next to you is a level 4 zombie. I really didn't expect that I would encounter a level 4 zombie, and a human at that. If I had known it earlier, I wouldn't have stayed here." He was a little surprised, but quickly reacted, "I almost forgot. You and the masked man are not on good terms, so he should not have told you that there is a level 4 zombie among us. By the way, we've been waiting here for a while. Why hasn't the masked man come back yet? He wouldn't really have run away, did he?" Brother Xiaopao sneered. He ran away in the middle of the night yesterday, while it was still raining. Before he left, he said something like, he had helped me catch you, so he didn't owe me anything. It's really funny. I worked so hard to help him reach level 3, but I ended up raising an ungrateful person. Having said that, since you are level 4, how could you fall into the hands of the masked man? Unless you were pretending to be caught from the beginning. Damn masked man, you killed me this time. He looked at Wang Qiushui. "Did you record this?" Wang Qiushui nodded and took out his cell phone. I've recorded it. He smiled. Just record it, and then you can let his brother play it. Well, this way the masked man will have one more enemy, and maybe we don't even have to do anything. Brother Xiaopao looked at the two of them, not knowing what to say. He looked at Brother Xiaopao. There are some things I need to explain to you. We did pretend to be caught, but we really can't beat the masked man. Well, it can't be said that we can't beat him, mainly because it rained yesterday, and he hid in the rain, and we couldn't hit him at all. Moreover, the level 4 breath suppression seems to be useless on him. I don't know if he can be strengthened in the water. Do you mind revealing some information about the masked man, so that we can help you get revenge? Brother Xiaopao snorted coldly. You are all my enemies. Why should I help you? Maybe you will fight to the point of being both injured and then die together. Then I will be happier. He nodded. That's right. Forget it. It's getting late, and I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. I'll get rid of you as soon as possible, and I should go back. But don't worry, I won't let you die so soon. You can just line up last and watch them die one by one. Those trapped people immediately begged for mercy. Hero, please spare our lives. We are just following orders. Everything was instructed by Brother Xiaopao, and we did it. It has nothing to do with us. He was too lazy to pay attention to those people, but glanced at Wang Qiushui. Wang Qiushui understood, stretched out his arm, and smashed the first person's head with a hammer. The man's head exploded like a watermelon. White and red splashed everywhere, and many even splashed on the faces of the people next to him. Qiushui covered her sister's eyes with her hands and scolded. Why are you making it so bloody again? He moved his lips, but couldn't think of how to answer. At this time, a little head was poking out of the door and suddenly rushed in. When he saw Qiushui, he breathed a sigh of relief. Let Spider-Man take Zillion out to play. This place is not suitable for her. Qiushui worried. Will there be danger outside? He thought for a while, then let them play here at the door. There is no mechanism here. It's very safe. So Qiushui took her sister and Spider-Man out and told them that they could only play near the door and not run around. Qiushui saw that Spider-Man was very happy, so she agreed directly. Just now, I have been standing there, unable to speak, and I'm almost bored to death. Afterwards, Qiushui came back. Brother Xiaopao was not dead yet, and she couldn't leave like that. Chapter 302 Inside Story. When Qiushui went out, Wang Qiushui did not stop and went back to his old job of smashing moles. However, this time, the moles were trapped and could not hide, so they could only be beaten. Unfortunately, their levels were low, so they basically could not withstand a hammer. Of course, occasionally there were some people with the ability of copper skin and iron bones, and they were very lucky and did not trigger the characteristics of the earth hammer, so they could withstand a hammer. Then, Wang Qiushui would give them another hammer. At the beginning, those people were scared silly, but when they reacted later, they were all crazy and cried for their parents. After all, living people were killed in front of them, and they were killed by headshots. The brains and blood sprayed on their faces were still warm. That feeling, don't mention how exciting it was. Some people even vomited and cried for mercy. The most important thing is that Wang Qiushui did not kill the next one immediately after killing one. She had to pause in the middle, sometimes for a few seconds, sometimes for a minute or two, so that the person who knew that he was about to become the ghost under the hammer was even more tormented. This is a kind of mental torture. Knowing that you are going to die, but not knowing when you will die, is more painful than physical torture. Finally, someone couldn't stand it anymore and shouted, "Don't kill me, just don't kill me, I'll do anything." Wang Qiushui glanced at him, and he nodded, so Wang Qiushui stopped. He looked at the man again. "Tell me what you know about the base. You can tell me everything you know." A glimmer of hope ignited in the man's eyes. "You won't kill me after that?" He shook his head. "Of course not. I can give you a quick death. Or, I can send you to the base's materials. I heard that materials can be exchanged for supplies with the base." The man's face suddenly changed, and he shook his head frantically. "No, I don't want to go back to that place. I don't want to be materials anymore. No." His eyes gradually became crazy, and I don't know what he remembered. Qiushui happened to come back, and seeing the man's appearance, he shot him in the head. The man was already scared crazy, and he must not be able to ask anything. He looked at the others again. Finally, someone asked, "Do you mean what you said just now? You won't torture us after you finish speaking, will you?" He shook his head. "I always keep my words. As long as you finish speaking, I will give you a quick death. You can even choose the way to die, with a hammer, a spear, a knife, or suffocate to death in the sand. Or I can go to the warehouse to get you a bomb." The man's head shook. "Let's use a knife. It's quicker." He replied, "It's up to you. Tell me what you know first, about the base, or the masked man, or Xiaopeo's brother." Xiaopeo roared when he heard it. "Anyone who dares to leak news about my brother will die a miserable death, and even your relatives and friends will die a miserable death." The man snorted coldly. "Really? But all my relatives and friends are dead. However, we don't know much about his brother. We only know that he is well known in the base, very popular, and has a large survivor organization with strong strength. As for the masked man, that person is quite mysterious. He usually doesn't want to communicate with other people, and has been hiding in the fish pond in the backyard. He will appear, except when he goes out to catch zombies. Normally, he is not seen. As for what abilities he has, we don't know. We only know that every time he uses his abilities, it is on a rainy day, or there is a lot of water nearby. As for the base, we actually don't know much, because we didn't stay in it for a long time, and we can't move around. Usually, it is Brother Xiaopeo who contacts the base, and the other party only comes to pick up materials and deliver supplies. We don't know more secrets." He was stunned when he heard this. Wang Qiushui asked curiously, "Did I hear you right? You have been in the base?" The man smiled bitterly. "Why do you think we can transform? Because we were once materials, and were captured and taken to the base for various experiments. It is said that many people died in the early stage of the research on the transformation needle. Until the transformation needle was successful, it only reduced the probability of death, and it could not be 100% successful. Moreover, different types of viruses have different degrees of adaptability to humans. Once they cannot adapt, they will directly become zombies or die suddenly. In short, there will be no good end. We are just some lucky materials who survived the first injection of the transformation needle. Because the adapted zombies are too weak and have no research value, we were sent here and became Xiaopeo's subordinates. Although we are weak, at least we can become zombies, which is a little stronger than ordinary people." The three of them looked at each other, not expecting such a thing to happen. This is really, knowing how miserable it is to become materials, they still help the tyrants to persecute other survivors. For this reason alone, they deserve to die. Wang Qiushui asked again, "Then that man just now went crazy, because he remembered the previous experiments?" The man shook his head. "Yes, but not entirely. It is said that he was one of the survivors of the initial experiments, but his ability was too weak, so the base considered him to have no research value, and his wife, children, parents, and relatives all died in the experiments. Maybe your statement of sending him back as material aroused the memories that had been sealed in his mind." Qiushui suddenly asked, "I saw that Brother Xiaopeo gave you transformation needles, guns, and knives. Isn't he afraid that you will betray him? Just like just now, you can find an opportunity to kill him and then escape." The man smiled bitterly. "It's not that easy. The world outside is a world of zombies. If you want to survive, you have to fight zombies every day and walk on the edge of life and death. You also have to find food, but how much food can there be in this apocalypse? Besides, his brother's power is also one of the things we are afraid of. Finally, weapons and other things will only be given to us when we are in action, and we will never come into contact with them at other times. Moreover, the strength of such a boss is generally much higher than ours, otherwise he can't suppress us. Just like before, who would have thought that his strength is so strong?" He nodded. "Anything else to say?" The man thought for a while, shook his head, and then closed his eyes. He walked forward and waved his hand. The man's head fell directly to the ground, but there was a hint of satisfaction at the corner of his mouth, as if he was finally free. The blood spurting out of his neck dyed the faces of the people around him red. Chapter 303 Intimidation. Those people were not afraid, but became even crazier. They were tortured by the feeling of dying, and wanted to be free, as soon as possible. So, they shouted one after another. The masked man raised a lot of fish, and those fish can merge into a big fish. And every time he went out, he would take the big fish with him. But I don't know how he took it. Anyway, the big fish must not be in the fish pond. But when he took action, it was usually the masked man who took action, and the big fish was not seen. He nodded, which was consistent with the previous speculation, that the masked man and the big fish merged. However, he didn't expect that the big fish this time was actually formed by the fusion of small fish. It seems that the masked man has learned the lesson from the last time, that the big fish was too high, and did not obey orders. I heard that, when I was in the base, the materials and experiments were carried out secretly, and no one else could know, otherwise, there would be no way to proceed. From what they said, it seems that there are two factions in the base, and one faction does not support doing such things at all. He didn't believe this. It's not that I don't believe this information, but I don't believe the other factions claim that they were completely unaware. It's impossible that they didn't know about the flow of so many materials in and out, and the consumption of those materials. They are just pretending to be innocent. Maybe that faction will support this practice behind the scenes, or at least acquiesce. It is said that Xiaopeo's brother discovered the appearance of zombies very early, so he ran directly to a grocery store and got a lot of food and some knives. Then, before a large-scale outbreak, he ran to the police station, killed the police who had turned into zombies, and stole a few guns. It was with those guns that he officially made his fortune and expanded step by step. It's hard to say whether the police who were killed were the police who had turned into zombies or the police who had not turned into zombies. However, he tended to think that it was the police who had not turned into zombies, because he knew very well that it was not so easy for an ordinary person to kill a zombie, let alone several. On the contrary, as for the grocery store, he couldn't help but look at Wang Qiushui. Sure enough, Wang Qiushui also noticed it and asked directly, "Did they tell you where the grocery store owner went? Or, do you know the specific location of the grocery store?" The man hesitated. He should be dead, otherwise he wouldn't have used the word do. At that time, he was in a hurry, so he definitely wouldn't buy things slowly and then pay. As for the location, I can only say that it is in this area, but I don't know the details. Wang Qiushui looked at Brother Xiaopeo again. "You must know it." Brother Xiaopeo snorted coldly and turned his head away. "So what if you know? Why should I tell you?" He waved his hand. "It's likely, otherwise it wouldn't be such a coincidence." He should have known about the appearance of zombies a long time ago, so he went to steal knives and food. In order to save time, he naturally wouldn't slowly calculate the bill and pay. Of course, it is also possible that he had no money. So, he chose to kill the boss and hide. After that, he ran to the police station to report the case, saying that a murder had occurred, and then killed the police. Brother Xiaopeo glared at him. What he killed was a zombie, not a policeman. Don't talk nonsense. He smiled. They are dead and there is no evidence. Does it matter what they killed? Besides, the base is an official organization. Your brother is so smart that he would not say that he had killed a policeman. Wang Qiushui exhaled. "I didn't expect to meet him here. It seems that you are right. This kind of person is too smart. Not only did he not die, but he also developed his own power." He sighed. "This is fate. I really don't want to confront him. Now it seems that everything is doomed." Brother Xiaopeo sneered. "Why, are you scared? It's too late. My brother will definitely avenge me. I will wait for you downstairs when the time comes." He naturally knew that he was dead, so he didn't beg for mercy or anything. He shook his head. "Did you misunderstand something? I'm not afraid of your brother. I just think it's a bit troublesome. As for you, you don't have to wait for us. I'm afraid you can't wait. You should wait for your brother. He should be down to accompany you soon." Brother Xiaopeo said angrily, "You." But he didn't know what to say. He looked at those people again. "Anything else you want to add?" Those people rushed to speak again, but as they said, they were just materials. Whether it was about the base, Xiaopeo's brother, or the mysterious masked man, they didn't know much. So, what they said were all meaningless things. However, he still waved his hand and gave them a good rest. Until only brother Xiaopeo was left, he was not afraid at all. Instead, he sneered, "This is the funniest and stupidest person I have ever seen." He actually tried every means to beg others to kill him. He shook his head. "Then you should reflect on yourself. Why don't your subordinates have the slightest loyalty to you? You are such a failure as a boss." Brother Xiaopeo looked at him. "Come on, come and kill me. I'm in your hands today. There's nothing to say. The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. If I were a little scared, I wouldn't be called Brother Xiaopeo." He smiled and looked at Wang Qiushui. "Have you seen The Deer in the Cauldron? The part about corruption in it is really a classic, and it just so happens that we can use it now." Wang Qiushui thought for a while and asked, "You mean the skinning method? But I'm really curious whether it's true. Is it true that, as long as you make a hole in the head and pour mercury into it, the person will not care about the skin and jump out directly?" He replied, "Why don't you try it, and you will know." Cold sweat broke out on Xiaopeo's forehead, but he forced himself to remain calm and said, "Don't scare me. Where can you get mercury?" He frowned. "You're right, so I decided to try another method. First, I'll cut your scalp, and then use the crab's big claws to pinch you out." Xiaopeo's cold sweat dripped directly from his head, and he swallowed his saliva unconsciously, but still said stubbornly, "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." A knife of life and death appeared in his hand. "This is a scalpel. It is definitely sharp enough to easily peel off your skin. Because of this, you won't even feel pain in a short time. What's more, it can become longer. Even if you are buried in the ground, it can penetrate into your body and peel you out completely." Xiaopeo's face suddenly changed, and he watched him approach step by step with wide eyes. He shook his head and tried to struggle, but couldn't get free. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304. His brother called. He walked around behind Brother Xiaopeo and put his hand on Brother Xiaopeo's head, as if thinking about where to start. Brother Xiaopeo's face had turned pale. "What do you want?" He snorted coldly. "I don't want anything. You caught us and sent us to be used as materials before, so you should have expected this time. Why are you afraid now? If you can tell me more about what we want to know, I can consider letting you die like them, a quick death." Brother Xiaopeo still gritted his teeth and replied, "Would I be afraid? Just use whatever means you have. As for the rest, I won't tell you a word." He frowned and nodded. "Okay, but you have a lot of hair. It's not easy to start, so let me shave your head first." Then, Brother Xiaopeo felt a sudden chill on his head, as if a piece of hair was missing. Soon, the chill became more and more, and he even saw the fallen hair. That man was serious, and such a thought flashed through his mind. Wang Qiushui and Qiu were watching on the side. After shaving, he touched Xiaopeo's bald head with his hand. "Where should I start?" Xiaopeo's scalp felt cold, and a chill rushed to his brain, as if he had foreseen his fate. However, he still gritted his teeth, as if he was ready to hold on to the end. He said, "Then I'll start." Without waiting for Xiaopeo's response, he held the death knife and cut across Xiaopeo's scalp. Of course, he used the back of the knife. After all, Xiaopeo was the one who knew the most, and before getting enough information, Xiaopeo couldn't just die like this. Moreover, even if it was the back of the knife, since it was invisible, Xiaopeo would mistakenly think that he was really cut open, which could create a huge psychological pressure. Wang Qiushui hurriedly walked back, because she was afraid that she would not be able to hold back her laughter if she continued to watch. Xiaopeo only felt a chill on his scalp. The hard and cold feeling brought by the contact between metal and skin made him mistakenly think that his scalp was really cut open. He gritted his teeth, his eyes flickered, and I don't know what he was thinking. He sneered, "Your bones are quite tough. I wonder how long you can hold out." Even if you want to talk later, it will probably be too late. After saying that, Xiaopaoje felt a chill on his head again, this time in another place, also extending from the top of his head to the back of his head. He could even imagine his scalp being cut open, revealing the flesh inside. At this moment, the mobile phone that had been on the table suddenly rang. He walked over. I wonder who would call you at this time. The caller ID on the phone screen showed a brother, but no phone number. So it should be Xiaopaoje's brother calling. He thought about it, picked up the phone, and pressed the answer button. A rough male voice came from the phone. Don't say anything, just listen to me. The car that was responsible for escorting the 4 materials has exploded. I heard that the team was wiped out, except for the captain, who was a level 3 zombie. The rest were all level 2. I'm worried that they will come back to trouble you, so you should retreat now. Take what you can take, and give up what you can't take. He was a little surprised. It seemed that Xiaopao's brother was doing quite well in the base. After all, it wasn't long after the car exploded, so it was normal for people inside the base to know about it. However, it was different for a survivor to get the news so quickly. Without getting an answer, the male voice said again, now Professor Zhang has raised the danger level of those materials to the highest level, and the reward as well. So, they are definitely not something you can contend with. Listen to me and retreat quickly. Moreover, that area is not safe anymore. It is estimated that many survivors will go there to hunt for those materials next time. He didn't expect that this phone call would bring him an unexpected surprise. As for those survivors, he was not afraid. Of course, the premise is that the other party does not use heavy weapons such as rocket launchers, otherwise who can withstand it? Even if he has an armored vehicle, it can't withstand a few bombardments. However, he has a scanner, so he doesn't have to worry about being attacked under normal circumstances. Unless he meets the masked man again, but the masked man should not wade into this muddy water again. After all, he just didn't want to fight last time, not that he really couldn't beat him. Moreover, for those survivors, he already has a rough plan, just waiting to implement it when the time comes. Since you dare to come and hunt them, you have to pay a price. At least you have to keep your life. Not getting a reply, the male voice was a little anxious. Are you listening? Speak. Hello. He smiled. I'm listening. You continue. The male voice paused and said coldly, who are you? Where is my brother? He turned around and glanced at the little cannon brother buried in the ground. I'm one of the materials you mentioned. Your brother is still here. Let him talk to you. After that, he put the phone to the little cannon brother's mouth. Xiaopaoje regretted. I should have listened to you, brother. If I had followed you, I wouldn't have fallen to this point. Then he roared, you will be down to accompany me soon. Suddenly, cracks began to appear on the floor around Xiaopaoje, and a strong breath burst out of his body, and then the redness of his eyes continued to deepen. Soon, he completely turned into a zombie, and could only make a ho-ho sound from his mouth. There was silence on the other end of the phone. He took the phone and took 2 steps back. Your brother seems to have injected an overdose of transformation needles and turned into a zombie. But you are lucky, at least you heard his last words. If it was later, you wouldn't have heard it. The male voice was like a volcano about to erupt, and he said with an uncontrollable anger, just wait, I will make you pay with blood. He waved his hand. You are wrong. Your brother injected himself secretly. We all immobilized him, but we still couldn't stop him. So, he committed suicide, and it can't be blamed on us. However, even if you don't come to us, we will come to you, because you once killed a grocery store owner. The male voice sneered. Why, is that boss your relative? He shook his head. No, we don't know him. We just took a lot of food in his store and wanted to repay him. In addition, although we are already mortal enemies, the account still needs to be settled, so as not to let the real murderer go unpunished. So, I want to ask, did you kill the owner of Leolong Supermarket? The male voice was silent for a moment, and finally said, yes. Chapter 305 The Surviving Woman. He suddenly felt relieved. He didn't expect that the words he said casually at the beginning would actually come true until now. Could it be that the boss was really in heaven, so he arranged it for him? Wang Qiushui's mood was also complicated. As she met more and more survivors, and there were zombies everywhere, she once thought that the murderer might have died, but she didn't expect to meet him again today. The male voice said again, "I hope you can survive the hunting of those people. If you can't even do this, then I guess we won't have the chance to meet again." He smiled. "Don't bother with this. By the way, let me ask you one last question. Is your last name Zhang?" The male voice was a little confused. What is this question? But he still answered, "Yes." He continued, "Your brother is called Zhao Pao, so you are called Da Pao, Zhang Da Pao?" The male voice was even more confused. "Yeah." Wang Qiushui said, "Zhang Yida?" Qiushui followed up and said, "Snake?" Then, the three of them laughed together. The male voice didn't understand, and directly cursed him as a lunatic, and hung up the phone. He looked at Qiushui. "What do you think? Do you want to take action?" Qiushui shook her head. "Forget it. I'm not interested in a zombie, but the masked man must be left to me." Hearing this, he waved his hand and chopped off brother Zhao Pao's head. At the same time, he said with regret, "He died too quickly and too easily. I wanted to get more information." Qiushui turned into a crab and took out the soul-breaking sword that was buried with him. At the same time, he asked curiously, "Does brother Zhao Pao have another hatred with you that is worth your trying every way to torture him just now? It should not be as simple as getting information." He looked up and thought for a while. "When we first met, he almost killed you and Qiushui. Then he brought people to capture us and sold us to the base as materials. The most important thing is that the insulting words he said to you this morning made me very upset. With the above, it is enough for him to die many times. If I had known earlier, I should have castrated him first, and then slowly interrogated him." Wang Qiushui snorted coldly, and turned his head away proudly. "Don't think that I will be happy if you say that." He sighed, shook his head and walked out, letting time dilute all this. Outside the door, Qiushui and Little Spider were having fun, and didn't care about what was happening inside. Then, they walked out. On the way, Qiushui asked, "Aren't you going to take the cell phone you just used? At least you can use it to make calls. If you get a few more, we can talk, even if we are far away." He shook his head. "Who knows if these phones have any positioning or something like that? Forget it. Besides, we can chat, no matter how far we are now. We just need to transform. Although it's troublesome, it's at least safe." Qiushui nodded when she heard it. In a parking lot, there were already many cars loaded with supplies parked there. Some survivors who were responsible for logistics were locked in the car. Most of them were women, and it is estimated that they were not just responsible for logistics. Some others were guarding around with guns, but looking at their uneasy expressions, they obviously knew something about what happened before, but they didn't receive any orders, so they could only guard here. Seeing the four people coming, those people were a little surprised, but they still pointed their guns at them. "Don't come over again, otherwise we will shoot." As soon as the words fell, a violent breath crushed over, pressing them directly to their knees, and the guns in their hands fell to the ground because they couldn't hold them steadily. The four people walked over slowly, and he smiled. "It seems that you haven't figured out the situation yet." Although the survivors in the car were not affected, they were still trembling. Seeing his gaze, they quickly opened the car door and got out. Then, one of the pretty women suddenly stepped forward and lowered her head shyly. "Do you need help with housework? I can do everything." He swallowed his saliva, and then he felt two murderosaurs sweeping back and forth on him, and hurriedly said, "No, I'm used to doing housework by myself." A trace of disappointment flashed in the woman's eyes, and then she retreated silently. He said again, "It's like this. Brother Zhao Pao has been killed by us, so you are free now." As soon as these words came out, a trace of joy flashed in the eyes of those women, and then they were confused, as if they didn't know where to go in the future. And those who were kneeling on the ground were terrified, and even considered whether to worship the new boss, and they didn't know whether they would be accepted. He went on to say, "As for those kneeling people, you can take revenge if you have a grudge, and you can take grudge if you have a grudge." The women took a step back when they heard this, and did not come forward. Those kneeling on the ground looked at him carefully, then turned around and glared at the women, as if to see who dared to come up. Qiushui asked on the side. So, we have to watch them kill each other? Isn't it too cruel? He shook his head. They have to rely on themselves to survive in the future. Not only do they have to kill people, but they also have to kill zombies. Otherwise, they will die sooner or later, or fall into the hands of other survivors, and live this kind of life again, or become material. So, now they are just practicing in advance. Wang Qiushui nodded. That makes sense. If they can't even do this, they won't live long in this doomsday. At this time, the woman from before suddenly stepped forward. Where are the weapons? He pointed at the people kneeling on the ground. Don't they have them? The woman walked towards one of them, then pulled out a knife from the man's waist and stabbed it into the man's body again. The man was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't expect that the woman would actually dare to attack him. He glared at the woman. You. The woman pulled out the knife, looked at the blood on it, tears slid down her face, and then continued to stab the man until he died. The remaining women suddenly rushed up like crazy, holding various knives and weapons to attack those people, venting their suppressed emotions. The scene was extremely bloody for a while. Qiushui had turned away early in the morning. This scene was too inappropriate for children. But she looked at the little spider and asked, what will happen if the knife cuts you? The little spider stared with a pair of big red eyes, full of confusion. Qiushui continued, didn't you upgrade? Do you want to try? Maybe you have evolved into a copper skin and iron bones, and you are no longer afraid of being cut by the knife. There were only 3 words in the little spider's eyes. People do things, and struggled to leave. Qiushui smiled and said, it's just talk. How can I bear to cut you? The little spider stopped struggling. Chapter 306 Dual Mechanism. By the time they stopped, those people had been chopped into paste. Some people kept sitting there crying, some laughed, and some suddenly dropped the knife in their hands, as if they didn't expect to do such a thing. He looked at those people and said, there are food and weapons here, you can take half of them away. It is said that in addition to the bad guys in the base, there are half good guys. I don't know whether this is true or not. You can choose to go to the base, or choose another place. In short, this place is not suitable for you, because there will be many survivors coming to trouble the 4 of us. If you stay here, you may be injured by mistake. After all, I believe you are quite clear about what those survivors are like. The woman suddenly said, then we can stay and help you. Although we don't have much strength, you saved us, and we also want to do something within our ability. The others also looked over. He shook his head. The battle at our level is not something you can get involved in. If you are here, you will only be a burden to us, or become cannon fodder. Just like just now, if someone points a gun at you, you will all die, but we won't. The woman's expression dimmed for a moment, and she quickly said, I understand. I hope we will have a chance to meet again. By the way, my name is Rose. He nodded. Good luck to you. Then, Rose naturally became the leader of the group and directed the work. Since there were so many of them, they simply had a few people in one car and dispersed the supplies to each car. In this way, even if one or several cars had an accident, the impact would not be great. He couldn't help but sigh. With Rose here, maybe they can really fight their way out. From beginning to end, Rose's performance was different from others. She showed calmness and wisdom, as well as ruthlessness and determination. Wang Qiushui asked, then let Rose stay. She can help you share the burden. He shook his head. Forget it. They need Rose more. Besides, I don't trust her very much. Once such a person has strength, the backlash will be terrible. Qiushui heard the word trust, and her eyes flickered. I don't know what she was thinking. After packing up, Rose came to say goodbye to them. He reminded, the roads here are full of traps on both sides. You'd better dismantle those traps before going over, so as not to fall over at the last moment. Rose smiled and said, I have sent someone to do it. We are going to use explosives to detonate those roads, and then go out. This way, it will be convenient for you to leave later. After that, there was an explosion in the distance. They should be taking action. He nodded. That's good. I wish you a safe journey. Rose stretched out her hand. Thank you for saving my life. I hope we can see each other again one day. He held Rose's hand. Well, see you again, if we are destined. Rose smiled and turned to leave. Wang Qiushui asked from the side. After holding it for so long, is it soft? He shook his head. Your hand is still softer. Wang Qiushui snorted. He looked at Qiushui again. Let's pack up and get ready to go back. Qiushui yawned when she heard that she could go back. She was woken up after just a short nap yesterday and she sat on the ground the whole time, so she couldn't fall asleep at all. Qiushui looked at her sister and nodded. Yeah. Then, they started to pack up. In fact, there was nothing to pack. After all, the car had been loaded before, and now it was just moved together. Since there were only 3 of them, they just loaded 3 large cars, and each of them drove one. Zillion and Little Spider naturally sat in the same car with Qiushui. Then, they drove the car, and prepared to go out. However, when they were about to reach the main road, a sense of alert suddenly flashed in his heart, and he quickly called for a stop. Wang Qiushui, who was at the front, slammed on the brakes, and stuck his head out of the window. What's wrong? He got out of the car. I think something is wrong. Wang Qiushui also got out of the car. What's wrong? Those women didn't leave just now, but ambushed us in front. He shook his head. Not them. They have already left. I'm talking about this road. There's something wrong with this road. Wang Qiushui was stunned for a moment, then pointed at the road that was bombed and full of potholes. What can be wrong with this? So many of them went there just now, and they were all fine, weren't they? Or does this road have intelligent recognition capabilities and can accurately strike us? He thought for a moment. Before Brother Xiaopao died, he only said 2 sentences. One was that he regretted not following his brother, and the other was that we would die soon. Qiushui, who was walking over, continued, there's nothing wrong with these 2 sentences. Wang Qiushui also said, yes, he must have thought that his brother would help him get revenge, so he said we were about to die. He nodded. It's not wrong to understand it this way. However, he never mentioned asking his brother for revenge the whole time. So, there is another understanding. That is, he was very sure that we were going to die. But even Brother Xiaopao was dead, and there was no one nearby, so how could we die? Only a mechanism set up early in the morning can do this. Wang Qiushui frowned. I still can't think of any mechanism that can do this. Qiushui looked ahead. We will definitely leave from here, but the mechanism here has been destroyed. Even without them, we would have destroyed it ourselves, and it is not fatal. He looked at the road surface. What if there is more than one layer of mechanism here, and there is another layer below? Wang Qiushui still couldn't figure it out. Even if there is another layer below, how can we guarantee that it will be triggered? He responded. Remember the pressure bomb in the morning? It will be triggered when it reaches a certain weight. Qiushui added. There are only 3 of us, so we will definitely fill the car before leaving. And the weight of a full car will definitely trigger the mechanism below, or the pressure bomb, and blow us up to the sky. So, Brother Xiaopao said that we will die soon. Wang Qiushui suddenly realized, no wonder they used so many vehicles to load supplies. This also happens to explain why Rose and the others were able to pass smoothly. In other words, this is specifically used to deal with us? He shook his head. This should be a backup plan. Even if they are destroyed by other forces, as long as there are not many survivors on the other side, they will also choose to fill the car, and they will die at that time. Wang Qiushui snorted coldly. He is really cunning. He sighed. Brother Xiaopao is not that smart. This backup plan may have been thought up by the masked man. Qiushui said angrily. This masked man is really a disaster. It's a pity that he ran away. Chapter 307 Fresh Meat and Vegetables. Since they had such a guess, they naturally would not commit suicide. They simply divided the things in one car into 2 cars, so that they only needed to make one more trip. Moreover, the weight was reduced by half, and it would definitely not trigger the mechanism again. However, after passing smoothly, he turned back and drove another car to park on the road. Then he imitated what he did in the morning and started throwing things on the car. When it reached a certain critical point, the ground really exploded with a boom, blowing the car to pieces, and some fragments were blown into the sky. And this is not over yet. It continued to explode all the way forward and finally stopped after a long distance. There should be no more bombs buried behind. If someone is inside, they will definitely die. Even a high-level zombie with a copper skin and iron bones cannot withstand such a powerful explosion. Wang Qiushui was frightened. These people's tricks are really hard to guard against. We were the ones who were almost blown up. He breathed a sigh of relief. Let's go. An explosion of this scale can greatly remove the smell we left behind. Even if a guy like Leo Gao comes, it won't be so easy to find us. Then, they moved the things back together, and the three of them drove back. When they returned to the building, Qiushui had fallen asleep in the car, but she was still holding Spider-Man in her arms. Qiushui carefully carried her sister out of the car, and then Wang Qiushui, who had transformed, directly carried Qiushui into the room through the window. After all, the bodies and bloodstains on the stairs had not been cleaned up in time. If Zillion suddenly woke up on the road and saw those things, she would definitely be scared to death. Then, the three of them began to move the things in the car into the house. For the time being, they still have to live here. After all, this place is remote enough, and it is not so easy for those people to find it, even if they want to. If it weren't for Leo Gao leading the way, the masked man would not have been able to find it so easily. After moving, they began to deal with the bodies in the building and simply rinsed them. This was not for hygiene or anything like that, but mainly because they were worried that the smell would affect their lives after they rotted. If these were not humans and not zombies, he would have wanted to use a juicer to juice them all. After tossing around for an afternoon, they started to cook dinner. Today's main dish is pork, and it is fresh pork. In addition, there are some fresh chicken and vegetables, which seem to be sent from the base. It can be seen from this that the base's preliminary preparations were done very well, and even these things are available. It seems that the base did foresee the emergence of the zombie virus early on, so it prepared these things in advance. In addition, it can also be seen how generous the base's reward this time is, or how much it values the four of them. After all, the fat man prepared so many materials before, but he couldn't get fresh meat and vegetables. Since he couldn't finish them, he also specially upgraded a refrigerator to freeze the meat and vegetables. In this way, they can eat for several days. Wang Qiushui helped excitedly. I thought I would never be able to eat fresh meat and vegetables in my life, but I didn't expect to be able to eat them today. He laughed. Forget about the meat, but for vegetables, there are potatoes and sweet potato leaves, right? Wang Qiushui's face fell instantly. Don't mention these two, I'm about to vomit. By the way, are you sure these are pork and chicken, right? Don't tell me the same as the ones the fat guy ate before. He was speechless. It's said that you haven't seen a pig run, but you haven't eaten pork. I think you haven't even seen pork. Wang Qiushui responded confidently. I've seen cooked ones, but I've never seen raw ones. I've never cooked before. How could I have seen them? Qiushui smiled. Then don't worry, eat them. They are definitely pork and chicken. There is a big difference between these two and humans. Humans have more fat, and it is yellow fat. Wang Qiushui glanced at the yellow chicken skin and shuddered. Then I'd better eat pork, so as not to affect my appetite. Tonight, I want to be a dry eater. After making dinner, Zillion went to wake up her sister, and then the four of them gathered together to eat happily. This was the happiest and most delicious meal they had had since the apocalypse. Because he was happy, he also brought a few bottles of beer. Drinking just a little of this stuff would not make you drunk, and it just set off the atmosphere. Qiushui struggled to pick up a piece of shiny pork with chopsticks and put it in the bowl. She had just learned to use chopsticks, so she was not very skilled. The little spider watched eagerly from the side. Humans and zombies did not share the same joys and sorrows. It just thought they were noisy. Qiushui looked at the little spider. Do you want to eat pork? The little spider shook its head. It could only eat zombies, and it could not eat these foods. He suddenly picked up a cup, poured a full cup of beer into it, and then placed it in front of the little spider. Try this. Wang Qiushui asked curiously. Can it drink this? He smiled. I don't know, but beer is at least liquid. It should be able to drink it. Sure enough, the little spider looked at it, put its fangs in directly, and then sucked up the beer in the cup in one go. After drinking it, it seemed to be unsatisfied, and it just took 2 steps forward and fell down. Wang Qiushui smiled and said, little spider's alcohol tolerance is not good. It's drunk at this little. Hearing this, the little spider struggled to get up, as if he could still drink. The meal took a long time, and everyone was very happy. After eating, Zillion took Zillion back to take a shower, and then watched Zillion go to bed. He was taking a shower in Wang Qiushui's room. When he came out of the shower, he saw Wang Qiushui and Qiu Zillion looking at him. He felt guilty and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Wang Qiushui and Qiu Zillion went out directly. "Just follow me." He thought about it, followed them, and then came to the roof. There was a table on the roof, some snacks, and even a lamp, so he could see clearly. And the weather was very good tonight, and the stars and the moon in the sky could be seen clearly. Wang Qiushui and Qiu Zillion sat on both sides of the table, then took out 3 cups and filled them with beer. "Let's do it." He hesitated for a moment and asked, "Well, it's getting late. I'm a little sleepy. I want to go back to sleep." "Okay." Wang Qiushui slapped the table. No. He had to sit down obediently, picked up the cup, looked at Wang Qiushui, and then looked at Qiu Zillion, and had a bad feeling. Could it be that these two people wanted to settle the score later? But in the morning, they clearly didn't give him a chance to speak. However, Wang Qiushui and the other man did not speak, and followed his example, to pick up the cup. For a moment, the atmosphere was a bit weird. He could not help but swallow his saliva, and began to think of a countermeasure. Chapter 308 Qiu Zillion's problem. At this time, Wang Qiushui suddenly said, "Zhi-Lan has something to ask you." He silently put down the cup, and then looked at Zhi-Lan. "Ask." Zhi-Lan looked at him. "What was the transformation this morning?" He was stunned for a moment. "Didn't Qiushui tell you?" Wang Qiushui took a sip of beer. "She is asking you now." His heart tightened, and he quickly said, "This is an accident. I always thought Qiushui would be by my side. Who knew that you were replaced? Moreover, I asked the leader to change his position, but he refused. The situation was urgent, so I had to do it that way. Otherwise we would have been sliced into pieces in the base now." Zhi-Lan shook her head. "I'm asking why I transformed, not asking you to answer these." He swallowed. "Actually, it's like this. In addition to the transformation needle, I can also make auxiliary transformations by exchanging saliva, which is what you did this morning." Zhi-Lan nodded. "So, you used this method to transform before?" He glanced at Wang Qiushui and replied, "Yes, strictly speaking, before the transformation needle appeared, we have always transformed in this way." Zillion took another sip of beer. "So, when you transformed before, you had to hide, because you didn't want me to know? Even more, you didn't let me be your assistant, because you didn't trust me?" He waved his hands repeatedly. "This question is a bit difficult to answer. Let me sort it out first." After that, he picked up the cup and drank the beer in it in one gulp. "This is a life-threatening question. If you don't answer it well, you don't know what the consequences will be." Don't look at Wang Qiushui, who has been silent all the time. It is said that the calmest time is before the storm. No matter how he looks at it, he feels that Wang Qiushui is like a volcano ready to erupt, silently, but once it erupts, it will be earth-shattering. He thought for a while and said, "Actually, it's like this. When we met, we were both at level 2. We only needed to kill the big fish to reach level 3. The transformation needle only appeared at level 3, so we had always transformed that way before. After all, we had just met at that time, and you have met a lot of people in the apocalypse. It is absolutely impossible for me to completely trust you. When we first met, not only am I responsible for my own life, I'm also responsible for Qiushui's life. You also know the sequelae of the transformation. If both of us are exhausted, and you have bad intentions, then we are dead. As for later, we have always had different philosophies. Plus, you always wanted to leave, so I didn't think it was necessary to let you be an auxiliary. Qiushui and I were trapped in this building at the beginning, and we had no choice but to transform into zombies to survive. And you are a normal person. If I rashly went up to you and asked you to transform into a zombie, you would not agree. As for why I haven't told you this transformation method until now, at the beginning, I did have the intention of keeping a trick up my sleeve, not only for you, but also for others. Because, no matter what, they would never have thought that there are people who can transform through methods other than the transformation needle. So, we were able to successfully escape today. If we usually transform in this way, not to mention the bad influence of Zillion watching from the side, it would also be easy for others to know. By then, we will be completely separated directly, and we won't even have a chance to resist. The most important thing is that there is already a transformation needle. Do I have to go over and tell you that I can still let you transform in this way? By then, you will probably think of me as a pervert with ulterior motives and beat me up. As for this morning, I really didn't mean to take advantage of you. I really had to do it. I apologize. Qiushui drank the beer in the glass. Then I have no problem. I'll go back to sleep first. You two can chat slowly. After that, she actually left like that. He looked at Wang Qiushui again. I have already said what I wanted to say. I really didn't mean it this morning. I wish that you were next to me at that time, so that things wouldn't be like this now. Wang Qiushui nodded. I don't blame you. Why are you telling me so much? He was stunned for a moment. Wang Qiushui was obviously angry in the morning, and now she said she didn't blame him. Is she planning something? He was a little confused. This woman is so unpredictable, even harder to guess than the trap set by the masked man. Wang Qiushui also drank up the beer in the glass and then walked back. I will go to bed too. He looked at the half bottle of beer left and simply drank it all to avoid wasting it. When he returned to the room, the lights had been turned off and it was pitch black. He rinsed his mouth to wash off some of the alcohol on his body and sober himself up. He didn't know how to drink, but he drank a little too much tonight and suddenly felt a little drunk. Then, he groped his way onto the bed and hugged the shadow on the bed skillfully. The shadow struggled for a while, then stopped moving. He thought for a moment and suddenly asked, "Are you Zillion?" The shadow snorted coldly, "You are holding me, but you are thinking about Zillion. Do you have any thoughts about her?" He suddenly became much more sober and said quickly, "Really not, mainly because there are many such plots in the movies before. The male protagonist gets drunk and climbs into the bed of another woman. I feel a little dizzy now, so I have to ask clearly first. Otherwise, if I go to the wrong place, I don't know how to explain to you tomorrow morning." Wang Qiushui continued, "I don't know if what you said is true or not, and you said you are dizzy, but your logic is so clear. You don't look like you are drunk at all." He said helplessly, "You can't believe it. I'm so sleepy. I'm going to sleep first. Even if you want to deal with me, wait until I wake up tomorrow." After that, he closed his eyes as if he was really ready to sleep. Suddenly, Wang Qiushui turned over, broke free from his arms, and then pressed on him. He suddenly woke up completely, opened his eyes, and looked at Wang Qiushui on his body, and asked, "What do you want to do?" Wang Qiushui looked at him affectionately. "The powerful male protagonists in novels have several women, and I can't stop you. But I want to be your first woman." He was stunned for a moment, then gently stroked Wang Qiushui's head. "Don't be silly. I only like you. I really don't have any ideas about Zillion." Wang Qiushui shook her head. "Then I don't care. Anyway, you are mine tonight." He reminded, "Aren't you afraid that the child will have problems in the future?" Wang Qiushui gritted her teeth. "I can't care so much. Maybe he will be gifted by then." Then, after more than half an hour, he said helplessly, "Are you okay? I can't stand it anymore. This is simply torture." Wang Qiushui said discouragedly, "Hold on for a while. You will be well soon. I haven't tried it before. How do I know where to start?" He was speechless and turned over and pressed Wang Qiushui down. "Then let me do it. After all, I'm also an old driver who has watched countless movies." Chapter 309 Brother-in-law. The next morning, the two of them got up a little late. Qiushui seemed to have noticed something and didn't come to disturb them early in the morning. He looked at Wang Qiushui, who was still sleeping soundly, and couldn't help but kiss her on the face, and then prepared to get up. Wang Qiushui seemed to be awakened by his actions and opened her eyes sleepily. When she saw him, her mouth was full of smiles again. He smiled. "You sleep a little longer. I'll go make breakfast." Wang Qiushui nodded. He said again, "Don't stay in bed later. Zillion and the others will probably be waiting for a long time." If you stay in bed again, I'll see how you answer when Zillion asks. Wang Qiushui replied, I know, if she asks, I'll say it's all your fault. He smiled, who made me so gifted. Wang Qiushui's face was a little red, but she didn't refute it, but closed her eyes contentedly and continued to sleep. While eating breakfast, Zillion didn't ask why it was so late today. Maybe Zillion had told her in advance. After all, it was normal to get up a little late after not resting the day before. However, after breakfast, Zillion kept looking at him with a troubled look on her face. He frowned and asked Wang Qiushui, is there something on my face? Wang Qiushui shook her head, no. He couldn't help but feel strange. Zillion, why are you looking at me? Zillion became even more troubled after hearing this, and her brows were so furrowed that she could hardly twist them apart. After a while, she replied, I'm thinking about how to call you in the future. He was even more puzzled. Call me brother, or call me a bad guy. I'm used to it anyway. Zillion shook her head. No, I'm thinking about whether to call you brother-in-law. The three were shocked. Facing the questioning eyes of Wang Qiushui and Zillion, he waved his hands repeatedly. It's none of my business. Zillion responded in a baby voice, but, I clearly saw you kiss my sister yesterday. It was said on TV before that you have to get married after kissing. I have been thinking about how to call someone who marries my sister, and just now I remembered that I should call him brother-in-law. But I don't want to call you brother-in-law, because you killed grandpa. He didn't know how to respond for a moment. There was too much information in it. Zillion said quickly, who said you have to get married after kissing? Don't take things on TV seriously. He nodded in agreement. Zillion was tangled up and said, is that so? Then I'd better call him a bad guy. At this time, Wang Qiushui suddenly said, if you want, you can also call him brother-in-law. Zillion was stunned. He was wondering if Wang Qiushui was jealous again. Otherwise, why would she suddenly say this? And the two of them had just taken a step forward last night. Why would she still be jealous? But he still said, I really don't have anything with Zillion. Wang Qiushui rolled his eyes at him. I didn't say you had anything with her. He didn't know how to respond, and if he explained further, it would be like trying to cover up the truth. Zillion looked at the three people with confused faces, not knowing who to listen to. Little Spider felt that the atmosphere was a bit wrong from the beginning, so he retreated to the door early, and now he covered his eyes with his two front legs, looking like he couldn't stand it anymore. Wang Qiushui looked at Zillion. How do you usually call me? Zillion thought for a moment. Sister Qiushui. Wang Qiushui nodded. That's right. So you can call him brother-in-law Qiushui in the future, or just brother-in-law for short. He was relieved immediately, and was almost scared to death by Wang Qiushui. But he still said, forget it, just call him brother-in-law Qiushui. The abbreviation is easy to cause misunderstanding. Zillion also nodded. Zillion blinked her big eyes and suddenly asked, you kissed too? Wang Qiushui's face suddenly turned red, and he didn't know how to answer for a while. He waved his hand. Don't ask so many questions, kid. If you ask again, I will kiss you too. Zillion was terrified and ran out quickly. I won't marry a bad guy. Then she and Spider-Man disappeared outside the door. He turned around and looked at Zillion, who had a serious face, and smiled awkwardly. It's just a joke. Otherwise she will keep asking questions, and it will be endless, and it will be embarrassing for everyone. Zillion nodded and asked, what is the next plan? I haven't reached level 4 yet, and my combat power is not enough. Those survivors are coming to trouble us again. They will definitely bring heavy weapons, which is not easy to deal with. Moreover, this place is not suitable for staying for a long time. Maybe we should find a few more places. Just like Brother Xiaopao before, we should have 3 burrows, so that we are not easily exposed. Wang Qiushui also looked at him. The most important problem here is the survivors. They were lucky to face Brother Xiaopao before, and they were not directly bombed by heavy weapons. Now, their danger level in the base has increased. Those survivors may bomb them directly for safety. Although corpses are much cheaper, at least they can ensure that they are alive to get rewards. Unfortunately, their protective gear can only block some bullets, not those heavy weapons. But this is normal. The lethality of the two is too far apart, and there is no comparison at all. He smiled. I've already thought about these problems. There's no need to find a house. First, it's too inconvenient. Second, if they find any of our nests, a lot of our supplies will be taken away by them, which is equivalent to giving them away for free. It's too much of a loss. Wang Qiushui asked, what can we do? He replied, my current experience value is 62,175, which is not far from 100,000. If I work harder, I can buy a car with 100,000. Or, I'll see if I can upgrade one directly, which will at least be cheaper. By then, we can move all our things up there and run around, and we don't have to worry about being caught up by them. Qiushui asked, but can that car withstand heavy weapons? He thought for a while. Even if it can't withstand missiles, rocket launchers and the like, at least it can withstand them. After all, this is 100,000 experience points. We'll know that when the time comes. If not, let's find another house. Wang Qiushui nodded and asked, what about the survivors and Zilan's upgrade? He smiled. I plan to combine these two things and solve them at once. Wang Qiushui and the other person said in unison, together? He nodded. Aren't there no zombies here? Then it's time to bring in some zombies. Even if there are no low-level zombies, there will definitely be level 4 zombies. Zilan happens to need to kill a level 4 zombie to level up, so let them stop those level 4 zombies, and then we pick a level 4 zombie, and take it to another place to kill it. Wang Qiushui laughed after hearing this. No matter how powerful their firepower is, these level 4 zombies are enough to give them a hard time. Chapter 310 Upgrading the car. They naturally did not go out again that day. They really needed a rest after a busy day the day before, and Wang Qiushui also needed a rest. Qiushui naturally understood this, so she was happy to be free. He thought about it, and there was nothing to do, so he simply went down to take a look at the car he brought back before. The car produced by the base was not only strong enough, but also had enough space in the car compartment to hold a lot of things. If the car could be used for upgrading and modification, it would definitely be a good choice. After walking around the car, he called out, "System, come out for a moment." The lazy voice of the system sounded, "What are you arguing about so early in the morning? If you have something to say, just say it. If not, I'll go back." He looked at the sun hanging high in the sky and was speechless. Your time difference is not right. It's like this. Doesn't that new type of car require 100,000 experience points? I don't have that much, but I need a car recently, so, you see. The system yawned and said directly, that accepts loans. Let me see. Wow, I haven't seen you for a while. You have more than 60,000. If you borrow another 40,000, you can pay it off quickly. He paused. This system is a rip-off. He didn't know how high the interest would be every day for 40,000. He couldn't bear it. And if he hadn't attracted a lot of zombies into the juicer recently with the help of the little spider, he wouldn't have been able to accumulate so many experience points. So, he said, well, what if I don't buy the whole car, but upgrade it myself? How many experience points do I need? The system suddenly became much more energetic, and its voice was different. That depends on what kind of car you want to upgrade. After all, the quality of different cars is different, and the difficulty of upgrading is naturally different, and the cost is naturally different. He nodded. This is quite reasonable. Then can you help me see how much it costs to upgrade this car? The system was silent for a long time, and finally said with difficulty, the quality of this car is pretty good. I won't ask you for more, just 80,000. He was speechless. You think you are selling a bleeding lotus? I won't take advantage of you. Just 20,000. Just help me upgrade it, as long as it can be used. System, this is a new model car, so many people want it, but can't buy it. 80,000 is non-negotiable. He replied coldly, 20,000. The system paused. At most I will suffer a little loss. 70,000. It really can't be reduced any further. He was happy in his heart, knowing that the system was a big rip-off. So he said, since you take a step back, then I will also take a step back. 30,000. The system responded with a lifeless voice. Why don't you just say that the transaction is successful? I thought you agreed to that price. But no matter what, 30,000 is too little. The most I can do is to give in to 60,000. There's really no room for negotiation this time. He shook his head. 60,000 is all I have now. I have to take the daily pills every day, and Qiushui and the other two have to take them too. This amount is not enough for us to spend. Besides, I have to keep some for emergencies. You see, if a large group of people weren't hunting me down, I wouldn't be in a hurry to buy a car. How about this? 40,000, and keep the rest for me. You don't want me to die because of insufficient experience points and unable to buy healing medicine, do you? The system was silent for a long time, and after a while it responded helplessly. 50,000. It can't be any less. If you want to bargain again, I can only suggest that you take out a loan to buy a new car. He sighed and said with heartache, who made me need a car so urgently now? In fact, he was very happy in his heart, secretly sighing that he was indeed a bargaining genius, and he saved 50,000 experience points from the system. The system also responded with a heartache. Then the deal is done. Upgrade the car in front of you and spend 50,000 experience points. Are you sure? He nodded with difficulty. Upgrade it, but how long will it take? The system directly deducted 50,000 experience points and then responded, it will only take an hour. He looked at the only more than 10,000 experience points left and laughed happily. Moreover, he thought that the upgrade would take a long time, but he didn't expect it to be done so quickly. That means they can move the things in today, and then they can run around, and they don't have to be confined here. In the future, when killing zombies, they don't have to run back and forth. They can just drive over, which is a lot more convenient. At this time, the system's words made his mentality collapse directly. He only heard the system muttering to itself quietly, it only costs 20,000 to upgrade, and the total income this time is 50,000, which means a net profit of 30,000. If it is a new car, it can only make 20,000. Well, it is more cost effective this way. His eyes darted around. Where is my hammer? Oh, yes, I forgot to take the hammer. System, wait for me. I will go up to get the hammer of the earth. If you don't spit out the 30,000 today, I will fight you. This system must have watched the self-cultivation of actors. The acting just now fooled him. He thought he made a lot of money, but it turned out that he was a fool, and the kind of fool who was sold to others to count the money. Thinking of this, he became even more angry. The system was stunned for a moment. Didn't I turn off the microphone when I was talking just now? Forget it, you said the deal just now. It's no use to regret it now. He was angry for a while, but he still walked up angrily. This system is really a scam. It cheated him of 30,000 again. That's 30,000. How many zombies do you have to kill to save up? And it was enough for him to buy 300 primary powerful pills, which could be eaten as a meal. Wang Qiushui was lying on the bed, and seeing his angry look, he couldn't help asking, who made you angry again? Zillion? Or little spider? But I don't think I've ever seen you so angry. He had to tell Wang Qiushui everything. Of course he still concealed the existence of the system. After listening to it, Wang Qiushui immediately became energetic and sat up from the bed. That means, in an hour, we will have a motorhome? He nodded, but I don't know what it will be like. Wang Qiushui looked around. Well, I'll move the things in my room down first, and then move our supplies in. I don't know if the upgraded car is big enough. After all, there are several of us and a lot of things. No, I have to go to Zillion to discuss it. After that, he walked out excitedly. Looking at Wang Qiushui's back, he murmured, the point is not the RV. The point is the 30,000 experience points that I was cheated of. 30,000. After a while, he shook his head again. Forget it, I've been cheated anyway. Besides, Qiushui seems very happy, so I'll just spend some experience points to make her happy. When I think about it this way, I think it's worth it. The system's voice suddenly rang. Host, it's great that you think this way. He looked for the hammer of the earth again. Where's my hammer? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311 Invincible New Car. Then an hour later, Wang Qiushui came back with Qiushui, followed by Qiushui and Little Spider. No one knew what they were talking about, but they could talk for so long. As soon as Wang Qiushui came back, he asked directly, "How is it? Has the upgrade been completed?" He looked at the message sent by the system and nodded. "It has been upgraded. Let's go down and take a look." Wang Qiushui stretched out his hand. He was stunned for a moment. "What do you mean?" Wang Qiushui replied, "Transformation needle. Wouldn't it be faster to go down through the window directly? I can't wait anymore. Climbing the stairs is too slow." He couldn't help but say, "You are too extravagant." Although he said this, he still took out the transformation needle. After Wang Qiushui transformed, she hugged him and jumped down from the window, landed on the ground, and then added, "Don't move yet. Wait until we all come down and then watch together." He nodded. "Don't worry." Wang Qiushui then went up and then took Qiushui and her sister down one by one. As for Little Spider, it naturally climbed down the wall by itself. After everyone gathered, they stood in front of the car. Qiushui took a look and said, "This car looks no different from before. If anything, it's just a renovation on the outside, and all the damaged parts have been repaired." Wang Qiushui also nodded. He was a little skeptical, but still said, "It shouldn't be that bad. After all, it's a new car. Maybe the inside is different." Then, he opened the door and walked up, and the whole person was stunned. Wang Qiushui followed him and asked, "How is it?" Seeing that he didn't react, he pushed him again. He took a step forward and made way. "You'll know when you get up." After Wang Qiushui got up, she took a look and was also stunned. However, she quickly reacted and made enough room. Sister Qiushui and Spider-Man also followed up. They were curious about what the inside looked like, and they actually had such a reaction. Then, in front of everyone, except for the driver's seat and the co-pilot seat, the rest was the original large compartment. Moreover, the middle is connected, so it's no wonder that so many people can be accommodated. Qiushui was stunned for a moment, and then said, "In fact, if you look closely, you can't say that there is no change. At least, the board blocking the middle has been removed, which makes communication much more convenient." Wang Qiushui also said quickly, "This is good. We just need to move the bed down, and then separate it in the middle." The space in this compartment is still quite large. He was completely stunned. Although he knew that they were comforting him, he still couldn't help it, and yelled directly in his mind, "System, come out." The lazy voice of the system sounded, "What's wrong? I just worked for an hour to upgrade your car, and I was just about to take a nap and rest." He said angrily, "You took 50,000 yuan from me, worked for an hour, and upgraded to such a thing. Give me back the money." When this was mentioned, the system immediately became energetic and said quickly, "Don't worry, I will introduce you to the functions of this new car." He folded his hands and said nothing, but wanted to see how the system was going to brag. He had already decided that, even if the system was overstating the matter, he would have to return the experience points. In this way, it would be like getting something for free. However, the system was just refurbishing an old car, so it wouldn't be a big loss. The system went on to say, "You can also see these functions by clicking on the relevant information of the car. However, since you don't have the patience, I will explain it to you in detail. The first function is that there is a world inside. The space of this car is not as small as it looks. In fact, it can be infinitely enlarged and can hold many things. As for how to make it bigger, I will tell you in the next function. Moreover, even if the internal space is enlarged, the outside is still the same size and will not affect the actual use." The second function is fusion. You can integrate everything, such as water purifiers, zombie juices, in short, anything produced by the system. In addition, you can also integrate other cars, directly decompose other cars, and turn them into materials to reinforce the car, such as tires, glass and other places, making the car stronger. Moreover, the space inside the car will also be integrated to expand the space of the car. So, if you want the car to be bigger, then integrate more cars. The third function is independent design. After integrating other cars, there will naturally be a lot of materials such as iron and plastic. The host can distribute these materials by himself to create rooms or other facilities that belong to you. The fourth function is that, since this car is a new type of car, it naturally uses a new power source, namely the zombie virus crystals. The host only needs to place it on the glass container in front of the driver's seat, and it will naturally be converted into power. As long as there are enough crystals, the car can keep driving. The fifth function is intelligent driving. This car is equipped with the most advanced driving system, and has recorded the world's most advanced driving technology. Whether the host wants to drive autonomously or unmanned, it can do it. In particular, the unmanned driving of this car will never cause the situation where braking becomes acceleration, and safety is absolutely guaranteed. The sixth function is transformation. The appearance can be transformed into various styles of cars, but it must have been fused before. This function can be used in conjunction with the first function. That is, in the eyes of others, you are driving a sports car, but in fact there is an extra large compartment inside, which they can never imagine. Finally, all the functions of this car can be further upgraded, or the host can upgrade it by himself, and add new functions, all depending on the host's needs. In addition, the power of this car comes from the zombie virus crystals, so all operations of this car will can only use it as a power source. He was really stunned this time. He didn't expect that such a simple car could have so many functions. The 50,000 yuan was worth it. Wang Qiushui saw that he was standing still and couldn't help but push him gently. Are you okay? It's just 50,000 experience points. What's the big deal? I can kill a few more level 4 zombies and I'll be back. He suddenly woke up and hugged Wang Qiushui directly. We made a lot of money this time. The functions of this car are beyond our imagination. Wang Qiushui's face turned red instantly. Let go first. There are people watching next to you. The two sisters Qiushui looked like they were just watching you show off your love. Chapter 312. Increasing space. After he finished his introduction, Wang Qiushui and the other two were stunned. After a while, Wang Qiushui asked, that means we can have an infinitely large space and then divide this space into independent rooms, which can be used for living, for storing things, or even for other purposes? He nodded, but we have to wait and see the effect after the fusion to know the specifics. I don't know if the fusion consumes a lot. Wang Qiushui waved his hand. Fusion only consumes crystals. If it is not enough, we can just kill more zombies. We will definitely not lack this. Compared with this, I'm more curious about the actual effect. Qiushui asked, can we build a gym or a practice room? By the way, it should be bigger so that Zillion and I can practice. He nodded. If there is no problem with the fusion, then of course it is possible. After all, space doesn't cost money. Qiushui also asked, can I have a separate room? I want to sleep with Spider-Man. He looked at Qiushui. No problem on my side. The rest depends on your sister's consent. Qiushui thought about it and nodded. After all, for such a long time, Spider-Man had not done anything excessive or attempted to hurt Zillion. Although it has now been upgraded to level 1, it still treats Zillion the same as before. Qiushui saw it and laughed happily and hugged Spider-Man directly. Great, we will have our own room in the future. Spider-Man didn't understand why and laughed along. Then, he went back to take down the zombie virus crystal, and according to what the system said, he finally found the glass box on the driver's seat. Strictly speaking, the glass box was in the center of the steering wheel. He opened the box directly and threw the crystal into it, and the crystal disappeared in an instant. At the same time, information about the car suddenly appeared in his brain. New car, unnamed. The current driving mode is unmanned driving, switchable. The owner has been identified and can be controlled by voice or brain, and the authority can be distributed. The energy in the car can be used for uninterrupted driving for 6 months. He nodded. Not to mention 6 months. Even 2 weeks is enough. However, considering that it will be integrated and consumed by a series of things later, naturally the more energy the better. But even if there is no zombie, it doesn't matter. Just kill some zombies. Of course, the most important thing now is to give it a name first. He thought about it and typed the 2 words Red Rabbit. From now on, this car will be called Red Rabbit. Then, He gave several people permissions. Now they can modify the car and enter and exit freely and even have driving functions. Of course, he has the highest authority and can veto or revoke their permissions at any time. Wang Qiushui looked at him and said impatiently, "Let's try to merge first. I don't know how to operate it." He shook his head. "I don't know either." But he thought about it and said in his mind, "Merge." The prompt sounded, "Please select the car you want to merge. It is recommended to select the nearest one. If the selected car is not nearby, it will automatically drive over." At the same time, the distribution of nearby cars appeared in front of him. He directly clicked on the nearest car. Then, rows of mechanical arms appeared on their car and stretched out to the car next to it. After getting on the car, the mechanical arm directly dragged the other party over. Just when he thought the robot would further disassemble the car, something unexpected happened. When the car was dragged to the side of the car body by the robot, a big hole appeared next to the car body, and then the car was thrown in. Wang Qiushui and the other two were stunned. This is too simple and crude. Has it been disassembled or thrown into the car compartment? A message came at the same time. A small car has been successfully fused, consuming energy for 1 day's driving time. The internal space has increased by 4 cubic meters, and the durability of tires, body and other parts has increased by 1. He turned his head and said, "It has been disassembled just now, and now the space has become a little larger, and other aspects have also been enhanced." Wang Qiushui heard it and said, "Okay, you continue to fuse here, and we will go up to move things." He nodded, controlled Qiushui to drive to the next car, and started another fusion. The strength of the car body was originally quite high, and I don't know if it can withstand heavy weapons. If it continues to fuse, it should be possible. After a while, there was a boom, and he turned his head to see that there was an extra wall on the ground, and there was dust splashing next to it. When he looked up, he could see the whole picture of Wang Qiushui's room. The wall outside was gone. Just as he was watching, there was a loud bang, and the wall of Qiushui's room also fell down. He couldn't help but ask, "Are you moving or demolishing? Don't let the house collapse." Wang Qiushui replied, "If not, some large items cannot be moved, such as beds. It's better to do it this way. It will be faster and more convenient to move." He was stunned. "Can you move the bed down from above with one hand? Or do you think the bed is so strong that it won't break, even if it falls from the 8th floor? Wang Qiushui was stunned and asked quickly, "Then what should we do?" He was speechless. "It's too troublesome to move it like this. We can get some new furniture later. You can move down some small items first. By the way, I forgot to give the transformation needle to Zilan. After the transformation, you will be stronger and more efficient." Wang Qiushui jumped down with Zilan. "Yes, let's go to the famous brand furniture store last time. You said before that it was too troublesome to move, and there was no need. This time I have to move more, a whole set." He took out a transformation needle and handed it to Zilan, then said, "Okay, I'll make the space bigger first. After you pack up, we'll set off to the furniture store." Then, they each got busy again. Soon, all the cars nearby and on the road were merged by him. He didn't want to go to the ones farther away. There was no need. It was too troublesome to run back and forth. After merging so many cars, the internal space really became much larger. From the outside, it was still the original size without any change. No wonder it was called "There is a world inside." He thought about it and switched the car to a car. There are only cars on the road, so there is no difference. When he encounters a sports car, he must switch to a sports car to drive. Then, he got in the car and found that it was actually the same structure as a car. At the same time, an option popped up, asking if he wanted to enter the car. He breathed a sigh of relief. In this way, others would think it was just an ordinary car and would not think that there was a world inside. Chapter 313 Zillion returns home. Then, he also started to help move things. In addition to the things in the room they lived in, there were mainly the supplies they had collected before, which were the bulk of the things. Considering that they would not be coming back in the future, they moved all the necessary things into the car. The unnecessary things were also moved up. Anyway, there was a lot of space in the car, and it could be put in completely. Besides, it would be difficult to get these unnecessary supplies when they returned to their hometown in the future, so it was a rainy day preparation. Wang Qiushui was dumbfounded when he was carrying things down because there was only a small car in front of him, and the car with a super large compartment just now disappeared. "Where is my car?" He pointed at the small car. "That's it." Wang Qiushui blinked his big eyes and quickly reacted. "Wait, even if that is it, how should the things be put in?" He walked to the back of the car and opened the trunk. "Just throw it in. It will be automatically sent over if it is connected to the compartment here." Wang Qiushui put the things into the trunk doubtfully, but it really disappeared as soon as it was put in. "This is too magical." He smiled. "There are more magical things. You will know when you get on the car." Wang Qiushui nodded and continued to carry. The two sisters Qiushui Zillion were also carrying things, but Zillion was too small, so she could only carry some small things, but the important thing was to participate. As for the little spider, although he had a lot of legs, it was a pity that he couldn't carry things, and he was too small to lift, so he just ran in and out behind Zillion, probably also intending to participate. So, it took the three of them half a day to finish the job. This was because of his super physical strength. Wang Qiushui and Qiushui Zillion were zombies. Otherwise, it would probably take a day or two to move. Then, the four of them got on the car. Due to limited space, Spider-Man was half hanging on the back of the chair and was dragged by Zillion. Wang Qiushui sat on the chair and looked around. "I almost thought I was sitting in an ordinary car. Is this the magical place you mentioned?" He shook his head. "Of course not. Did you receive the prompt to enter the car?" Wang Qiushui frowned. "No." He replied. "This is better. It seems that only I received this prompt, and only I can decide who can enter the car. In this way, even if someone gets on the car, they will only think it is an ordinary car, and will never think that there is something hidden inside." Wang Qiushui looked at him. "You mean, you can enter the car directly from here?" The two sisters Qiushui Zillion were also curious. He snapped his fingers and sent the three people into the car. Spider-Man felt nothing under him and suddenly found that the other three were gone, and he was terrified. He snapped his fingers again, and the three appeared in their seats again. In fact, all this was controlled by his brain, and only one consciousness was needed. Snapping his fingers was just an unnecessary ritual. Wang Qiushui looked around. "I'm out again." Qiushui Zillion said, "There are too many things in the car, and it's too messy. How about we go in and clean it up first?" He shook his head. "No, after those things enter the car, they are controlled by me. I can directly specify them in any position. You should also have such authority. After we move the furniture in, and then design the space inside, it won't be too late to move." Qiushui Zillion thought for a while. "That's a lot more convenient." Wang Qiushui said to him directly, "Let's go. I can't wait any longer." He nodded and started the car directly. It was now in unmanned driving mode, and he didn't need to operate it. He just had to wait. At this time, a map suddenly appeared in front of him. He was stunned for a moment before reacting, and then selected the destination on it. Soon, the car drove forward. Moreover, when on the road, he would stop from time to time and continue to merge other cars. Although it would take some time, it could add a lot of space, which would be much more convenient when designing the car later. I don't know if this map was saved in the car before or what, but it is quite convenient. I just don't know if there is any music in the car. As he was thinking, a playlist suddenly appeared in front of him, with a lot of songs on it. He randomly picked one, and clicked to play. Then, a burst of music suddenly sounded in the car. Wang Qiushui was stunned for a moment, and quickly shouted, "There is music. I haven't heard it for a long time. Are there any other songs?" He shook his head. "Think about the music in the car, and see if there is a playlist in front of you. If there is, you can choose to play it yourself." Wang Qiushui looked ahead steadily, and suddenly said in surprise, "It really is. Let me think about what song to play." Then, the music in the car began to switch constantly, and it was obvious that Wang Qiushui was ordering songs. Qiushui Zillion looked at the car moving down and suddenly asked, "Sister, where are we moving to this time?" Qiushui Zillion was stunned for a moment. "We will move to the car just now. Wherever this car goes in the future, our home will be there." Qiushui Zillion's eyes suddenly turned red. "What about our previous home? Will we never come back? Didn't you say you would take me home in the future?" Wang Qiushui, who was ordering songs, also stopped when she heard this. It happened that she ordered a sad song, so a sad music sounded in the car. Qiushui was silent for a long time before she said, "Sister is too weak now. There are too many zombies outside. I can't protect you in that home. When sister becomes stronger, I will take you home. Otherwise, if you encounter a very powerful zombie, you will be in danger and our home will be destroyed. You don't want that, right?" Qiushui nodded with tears in her eyes. The little spider seemed to feel Zillion's sadness and suddenly turned around and threw himself into her arms, hugging her tightly with 8 legs. He silently changed the destination and drove down. When the car arrived at Zillion's house, it stopped directly. Qiushui took a look. "What is this?" he said embarrassedly. "I was so happy before that I almost forgot it. When Zillion mentioned it, I remembered it, so I brought you back to have a look. The last time I moved, I was in a hurry and didn't bring many things. It just so happens that you can take a look at what you need to take and say goodbye by the way." Qiushui's eyes were also a little red, and she choked up, "Thank you." Then she took Zillion out of the car. He suddenly felt a little depressed. "Or, let's stay here for a while, before going back to our hometown, so that Zillion's level can be improved a little, and she can stay here with Zillion. After all, my home is not their home, and they must want to stay here more." Wang Qiushui leaned her head on his shoulder. "I don't care where you are, is my home." Chapter 314 Designing a Room. Not long after, the two sisters Qiushui came down, holding a cardboard box in her arms, which should contain some things to take away. Zillion was holding little spider in her arms. Her eyes were tearful, and there were traces of tears in the corners of her eyes. Probably she had just finished crying. Wang Qiushui got out of the car and asked, "Is there anything else to move? We can help." Qiushui shook her head woodenly. Wang Qiushui helped open the trunk and let Zillion put the box in. Then, the car continued to drive towards the furniture store. After a while, when Qiushui's mood had almost calmed down, he said, "Qiushui and I plan to stay here for a while before going back." Qiushui frowned slightly, looking puzzled. He went on to say, "Your level will be higher by then, and you can decide whether to stay or go." Qiushui frowned. "Why are you talking about this again? Besides, aren't your parents in your hometown? Aren't you going back in a hurry?" Wang Qiushui said quickly, "In fact, we don't want to drive you away." He leaned his head on the chair and sighed. "Yes, they are all in their hometown. However, such a long time has passed, it is hard to say whether they have turned into zombies. Let alone other things, just the rain is enough. So, I guess there is not much difference whether I go back earlier or later." Qiushui nodded and said nothing more. He added, "Besides, that's going back to my hometown. Qiushui and I don't belong to this city, and there is no one in her hometown, so she will go back with me. And you and Zillion's home is here, so there is no need to go back with us." Qiushui looked at her sister after hearing this, her eyes full of expectation. Qiushui closed her eyes, took a long breath, then suddenly smiled and said, "Let's just think of it as a trip. I also want to see what your home looks like." Then she looked at her sister and said, "When there are not so many zombies, we can come back, okay?" There was some disappointment in Qiushui's eyes, but she nodded. Wang Qiushui breathed a sigh of relief and clapped his hands happily. Okay, that's alright. By the way, does your hometown have any specialties? You can treat them to them when the time comes, so that you don't end up traveling without tasting anything." He was just thinking that the little spider hanging on the back of the chair was a bit of a hindrance, so he casually said, "Roasted spiders. The roasted spiders in my hometown are so special. Just put the whole live spider on the charcoal and roast it. When it's cooked, cut a knife on the belly and take out the inedible internal organs. Add some cumin to the rest and you can eat it. The taste is really unforgettable. By the way, maybe when we go back, the little spider will grow bigger. Such a big spider must be delicious." The little spider quickly let go of his feet and threw himself into Qiushui's arms. Wang Qiushui laughed immediately. After a while, Qiushui and her sister also laughed. The atmosphere in the car suddenly became much more relaxed, but the little spider was the only one who looked confused. The stop and go movement naturally took up a lot of time, but the compartment space was indeed larger. Moreover, although it was constantly merging, the consumption of crystals was not large, and it was still enough. When they arrived at the furniture store, the space in the car had doubled. Wang Qiushui opened the door and got out of the car. Next, our task is to empty this store. So they got busy again. However, they thought that the trunk was too small to fit large items such as the bed. As a result, when they put one foot of the bed into the trunk, it was loosened directly, which was quite convenient. After moving the furniture, they moved some other electrical appliances and daily necessities in. In short, they moved everything they could use along the way. Finally, he pulled Wang Qiushui helplessly. These things are enough for us to use. Besides, you moved so many things in, and there is almost no place to put them. Don't forget, we still have to make a few rooms. Wang Qiushui thought for a while. Okay. By the way, it's okay now anyway, and we don't need to control the car, so we might as well go in and design it. He nodded and snapped his fingers. The next second, 4 people and a spider appeared in the carriage. Wang Qiushui looked at the piles of things and said embarrassedly, "Isn't this just for a rainy day? These things will not be made in the short term, so it is definitely right for us to stock up more." He shook his head and snapped his fingers. These things moved back instantly and were placed neatly, maximizing the utilization of the space. Then, he said, "Let's design the room first, and then move the furniture and other things in. For the rest, we can build a few utility rooms." Then, Wang Qiushui and the other 3 began to design, and he watched from the side, and would be responsible for the final coordination later. I saw steel plates rising in the carriage, connecting the upper and lower carriages, just enough to form a wall. After a while, the prototypes of the 3 rooms came out. He laughed and said, "Why do you 3 build rooms without doors? How will you get in and out when the time comes?" After speaking, he waved his hand, and there was an empty space on the front wall, just enough to install a door. Wang Qiushui walked into his room first, but soon frowned again. "It's so dark in here, it seems that I have to keep the light on." He shook his head. "Wouldn't it be fine to put a window?" Then, a window appeared on the back of the house, through which one could see what was happening outside. Of course, it couldn't be opened now, and it could only be opened when the car was transformed back to its previous state with a carriage. However, this was pretty good. Then, the steel plates above the head were all turned into glass, and the sunlight above could shine in directly. Wang Qiushui blocked the sun with his hands. "It will be very sunny during the day." He snapped his fingers, and a steel plate slowly pulled up. "That's fine. It's up to you, whether you want to bask in the sun or not." Wang Qiushui nodded with satisfaction. "This is a good design. On rainy days, you can lie on the bed and watch the raindrops fall. That feeling must be very pleasant." He looked at the design of the room again. "Let's leave it like this for now. By the way, Zilan, your 2 rooms are the same as here. I have fixed the windows and doors, and you can arrange the rest by yourselves. I'll go fix the hall and the utility room." Qiushui Zilan nodded, and Qiushui Zilan couldn't wait any longer, and rushed out with Spider-Man. "I don't know what design this carriage is. Even though I have been here for so long, and the windows cannot be opened, and there is no exhaust fan, I don't feel stuffy at all, just like staying in the house at ordinary times." Chapter 315 Fusion Props. He walked out of the room, and looked at the sundries. First, he made a few sundry rooms, and stuffed all the stuff in them. Then he started moving things. There must be a hall, so it has to be equipped with a set of sofas. There is also a skylight above the hall, so the whole hall is still very bright. There is a fish tank against the wall, with the 2 little turtles in it. Potatoes and sweet potatoes are planted on the shelf next to it. There is a window on the wall, just enough for the sunlight outside to shine in. Next is the kitchen, which is the most important thing, and is related to their stomachs. A lot of kitchen utensils were moved in. Since they had to be upgraded before they could be integrated, he upgraded all the kitchen utensils. In the future, there will be no need for solar energy, and it can be used directly by relying on the power of the car itself, which is much more convenient and safer. The range hood was naturally installed, but since it was directly integrated into the car, he didn't know how the smoke was discharged. As for the experience required for the upgrade, he didn't feel bad at all. Anyway, the car that originally cost 100,000 yuan can now be bought for 50,000 yuan, which is equivalent to saving 50,000 yuan. With so much saved, you can naturally splurge. Besides, these are necessary functions to improve the quality of life. Next is the toilet. Considering that there are 4 people, he simply made 2 toilets, so there is no need to worry about the problem of insufficient toilets. As for the discharge of toilet waste, he didn't know how it was done. Anyway, it was all done automatically. Then he also made 2 bathrooms and put a big bathtub in it, so it would be much more convenient to take a bath in the future. Needless to say, water heaters and washing machines were arranged directly. Then, he made another room as Zilan's practice room. However, it was just an empty room, and the specific design inside would wait for Zilan to slowly make it later. He didn't know what Zilan's requirements were. Then, considering the water use problem, he directly melted the water purifier into it. However, in this case, it would be inconvenient to collect water. You can't open a skylight to let the water fall. So, he upgraded the water purifier again, and this time the upgrade deducted 1000 experience points from him. He thought the system had tricked him again, but when he saw the upgraded water purifier, he laughed out loud. In the past, the water purifier could only be manually poured into it, and then slowly purified to separate the viruses in the water. The current water purifier, because it uses the car's own power source, will always be on. And it will automatically collect moisture in the air, and when the amount is enough, it will be purified. That is to say, no matter when and where, the water purifier is collecting and purifying water, so there is no need to worry about insufficient water. Well, maybe I can take a bath every day in the future. In addition, there is a special function specifically for heavy rain. It can instantly collect rainwater within a certain range nearby, which is convenient and fast. You don't have to wait outside for half a day with a bucket like before. Moreover, this function is tailor-made for masked people. As long as this function is turned on all the time, you can ensure that there is no rain nearby. How long can a fish out of water last? Similarly, without water, the masked man probably can no longer be invisible, and then he can be easily dealt with. Even if the masked man uses the water control ability of a sailor, he can still use the water purifier to collect the water. He collects as much as he wants, and it can even be said that he is more than happy. In this way, the next time he meets the masked man, it will be the end of the masked man. With the example of the water purifier, he integrated the zombie juicer into the car. However, the zombie juicer does not need to be upgraded. After thinking for a long time, he finally installed the zombie juicer at the back of the car, on the lid of the trunk. However, the internal spaces of the two are not connected, which will not affect the normal use of the trunk. Usually, you only need to open the lid of the juicer and wait for the zombies to jump in. After squeezing the juice, the virus inside will automatically serve as the backup energy of the car like the water purifier. Perhaps, he could still lure the zombies as before. However, now that he had a car, the efficiency should be much higher. He could just drive into the zombie group and take a turn and get a lot of crystals. After finishing these two, he remembered his scanner again. So he asked directly, "System, I don't mind if these two are integrated into the car. After all, I don't use them all the time, and it's not very convenient to carry them around. But, this scanner is not very convenient if I don't have it, because there are always times when it's not in the car. However, it's not convenient to keep the scanner on when driving, and I can't afford the experience. If I don't turn it on, I'm afraid I won't know I've encountered a high-level zombie. After all, the field of vision in the car is limited. Is there any good solution?" The system responded, 1000 experience points. Directly copy the scanner function to the car, and it will be upgraded synchronously when you upgrade in the future, without having to spend experience points twice. He smiled and asked, "Look, I've spent so much experience points today, can you give me a discount?" The system responded coldly, "Take it or not, forget it." He quickly said, "Yes, of course. Isn't it just 1000 experience points? Take it." The system directly deducted 1000 experience points, and then copied the scanner function to the car. At this moment, a three-dimensional picture appeared directly in front of his eyes, which fully displayed the distribution of the surrounding houses and zombies, and even the level of the zombies could be seen clearly. This was of course not because he turned on the scanner, but because of the scanner function on the car. Moreover, this can be turned on all the time without worrying about the problem of experience points, because this also consumes the energy of the car. It is precisely because of this that he took out 1000 experience points to merge. It seems to be a loss for the time being, but after a long time, it will definitely be a profit. Just being able to scan and discover the situation nearby at all times is already a big profit. He glanced at it and designed it like this for the time being and adjusted it later if necessary. Afterwards, he returned to Wang Qiushui's room. Wang Qiushui was struggling with what kind of wallpaper to use. Which one do you think looks better? He smiled and said, "You look the best." Wang Qiushui looked at him. "Be serious." He hugged Wang Qiushui. "I'm serious. Now I have a car and a house. Aren't you glad that you didn't follow the wrong person?" Wang Qiushui rolled her eyes at him. "I have a car, but can it be considered a house? And, if I remember correctly, this car was exchanged for the experience points we got from fighting zombies." He nodded. "So I'm glad that I didn't follow the wrong person and ended up with a rich woman like you." Wang Qiushui reminded, "Don't do anything rash. There's only a steel plate between us now, and the sound can be heard from the people next to us." He thought for a while. "I'll have to get some sound insulation cotton later." Chapter 316 Fully Automatic Juicing. In the end, he didn't stay in the room for long before he was driven out by Wang Qiushui. Wang Qiushui's reason was that he was interfering with her decoration of the room, which was a very good reason. He didn't go into the room of Qiushui and her sister. After all, it was a personal private space, and it would not be good to go in rashly unless they asked him for help. He walked around and there seemed to be nothing he could do, so he simply ran to the kitchen to cook. When he finished cooking, the three of them opened the door and walked out at the same time. He smiled and said, "Done. Just in time for dinner." Wang Qiushui shook her head. "It will take a while to clean up, mainly because I'm not satisfied with the layout of the room." Qiushui nodded and said, "Fortunately, I don't have to move, otherwise I will be exhausted." Qiushui also looked distressed. He was speechless. "Isn't the room a place to sleep? Just put a bed in it, and then get a dressing table for you to put on Macup. There are only 2 or 3 things. Why do you seem so distressed?" Wang Qiushui shook his head. "You don't understand. The bed must be placed in a suitable position to sleep comfortably. And then there is the color of the wallpaper, the position of the dressing table, and other messy things, all have to be placed in the right place, otherwise it will affect your mood." The 2 sisters Qiushui nodded in agreement. He looked confused and said, "Forget it. There is plenty of time anyway. You can do it slowly." Qiushui asked, "Aren't we going to kill zombies today? We are still fusing other cars like this. Are there enough crystals?" Wang Qiushui also looked over. He nodded. "It's enough. Don't worry. Besides, I have nothing to do later. I'm going to kill zombies. But I've already planned it. I can do it alone. So just do your own thing." Wang Qiushui asked, "Is it dangerous?" He shook his head. "No, it's very safe. It will be an attempt later. If it succeeds, it will be much easier in the future." Wang Qiushui nodded. He said directly, "Forget it. Let's eat first. Otherwise the food will get cold." So everyone started to eat. After eating, the 3 of them went back to their rooms to make arrangements. He cleaned up the dishes and went to the kitchen. Just throw the dishes and chopsticks into the dishwasher, wash them and disinfect them again, and it's a one-stop service. It takes a little time to wash the pots and so on. After finishing all this, he appeared directly in the driver's seat and stopped the car and took out some of the crystals inside, which is an important part of the plan later and is absolutely indispensable. Then, he came to the back of the car, opened the lid of the juicer, and threw the virus crystal into it. Now everything is ready, only the east wind is missing. He returned to the driving seat and checked the situation nearby. There are a few ordinary zombies on the street next to us. Let's test the water with them first. Then, there is a community next to us. and there seem to be many zombies in it. If it succeeds, we can go to the community. Then, the car started the unmanned driving mode and drove to the street next to it. It must be said that those who dare to drive swaggeringly in the doomsday are not ordinary people, especially for those who drive with loud music, fearing that the zombies can't hear it and have to reduce the speed to the lowest. However, ordinary people do this just to seek death. He did this completely to kill zombies. There was no way. Those ordinary zombies were too slow, and they didn't seem to be very smart, so he had to attract their attention in this way. Sure enough, before the car had time to turn into the street next to it, the zombies inside had already rushed out. They rushed to the front of the car first. After all, the sound here was the loudest. No matter if there is anyone inside, just follow the sound. At this time, a gust of wind blew, and the fragrance of the crystals floated out. The zombies stood up straight and rushed to the trunk of the car. Soon, they saw a black hole, and the fragrance came from inside. However, they didn't know what they were thinking, and they didn't rush in at the first time. He sat in the driver's seat and shook his head. In order to monitor the cockroaches, he installed a camera in the juicer. Now he can see that the zombies are drooling. Since the zombies don't go in, let's put some pressure on them. Then, the car turned around, drove forward slowly, and began to accelerate gradually. When the zombies saw the car running away, they hurriedly chased after it. When they found that the car was running faster and faster, one of them finally couldn't help but jump in directly. The fused juicer can squeeze juice without covering the lid, because the juicer is an independent space, which is isolated from the outside, but the smell will not be isolated. So, the zombie that jumped in quickly became part of the crystal. The zombies following behind only saw the zombie jump in, and then a strange sound came out, and then there was no movement, and they began to doubt. However, when the fragrance inside became stronger, they finally stopped hesitating and all jumped in. He nodded with satisfaction. The concentration of the virus should be about the same now. It's time to go to the community for a walk. Then, the car automatically drove to the community. There were quite a few zombies in the community, but they were all locked in, or they might be controlled by high-level zombies. Anyway, they didn't run out. He looked at the big iron gate in front of him, and drove the car directly into it. With a bang, the front of the car hit the big iron gate, and the big iron gate began to deform. Then, the car stepped on the throttle, and with a bang, the big iron gate flew out. At the same time, he also received a message. The durability of the front of the car -1 has been repaired. Sure enough, when the front of the car hit the big iron gate just now, it was obviously deformed, but it was suddenly intact. He nodded. This way, it is much more convenient. As long as the durability is high enough, there is no need to worry, even if it is hit by a shell. It can be repaired instantly. Moreover, the shockproof design of this car is very good. There was no feeling in the car after such a strong impact just now. I just don't know if it can withstand the shock wave of a shell. The wandering zombies heard the sound and saw the car. They were stunned for a moment and then rushed over here. They rushed to the car at first, but then they were attracted by the smell and rushed into the juicer. Chapter 317 Summer Ice Drink. Then, he drove the car around the streets, going wherever there were more zombies. At first, the zombies would chase the car and even attack it. However, after finding that attacking the car was useless, they were gradually attracted by the smell and ran into the juicer. Of course, there were some suspicious zombies who could control themselves and did not jump in. In this regard, he was too lazy to do it or to think of a way. Everything depends on fate, whether you want to jump or not. Anyway, now he doesn't need to do anything. Just set the route. The car will drive automatically, and then there will be a steady stream of zombies jumping in. However, it is a pity that, although he has been moving forward, he has never encountered a level 4 zombie. It seems that level 4 zombies are not so easy to encounter. Last time, I was lucky to encounter them at once, and get rid of 2 of them. On the way, there were also zombies who wanted to overturn the car. Looking at their skilled techniques, I know that they must have done a lot of such things before, and I don't know how many living people have died under this trick. However, they hit a wall this time. This car was already quite heavy with a large compartment. Then, they moved and put a lot of things on the car. In addition, they have been merging other cars, and they don't know how many cars they have merged so far. So, although this car is just an ordinary car now, it is heavy and definitely not easy to overturn. Fortunately, it is now driving on the main road. If it were some highways and bridges, he would doubt whether it would collapse due to overloading. I don't know if the fused car can only use space instead of those decomposed materials, which would at least make it lighter. Of course, those materials are definitely needed now. Before the survivors are dealt with, the more materials the car has, the better. Only if it is strong enough can it withstand the next attack. Seeing that there was nothing to do, and the juicer could run autonomously, he teleported back to the compartment, and took a bottle of juice, to drink on the sofa. This kind of thing would definitely not be imagined by anyone in the doomsday. You have to know that most people are still struggling to survive, and a small number of people are just a little more relaxed, far from being as relaxed as him. After sitting for a while, Qiushui came out of the room. Seeing him drinking juice, she couldn't help but asked, "Aren't you going to kill zombies? Do you need my help?" He picked up the juice. "I've prepared everything. Now it kills zombies automatically. I don't need to do anything. By the way, do you want a bottle of this? There's some in the refrigerator. It was just put in not long ago. It's a little icy. It's very comfortable to drink in this hot summer." Qiushui shook her head. "Since you don't need help, I'd better go to practice. By the way, have you arranged the practice room?" He replied, "I have empty a room to use as a practice room, but there's nothing in it. You can arrange the specific design yourself, or if you need any equipment, just let me know, and I'll see where I can get it on the map." Qiushui nodded and entered the practice room. Not long after, Wang Qiushui also came out, and sat next to him. "I'm so tired, finally done. You are actually slacking off here alone and drinking juice." He took a sip. "What a pity, there are no fresh fruits in the basis supplies, otherwise I could drink fresh juice now." Wang Qiushui pushed him. "Go and get me a bottle, I'm so thirsty." He didn't move. "Go get it yourself, if you want to drink." Wang Qiushui looked at him. "Are you going or not?" He shook his head firmly. "No, I don't want to move." Wang Qiushui snatched the juice from his. "If you don't go, I'll drink yours. Anyway, I don't want to move." He smiled. "I've drunk this juice. There's my saliva in it. Are you sure you want to drink it?" Wang Qiushui snorted coldly and laughed. "Have you forgotten how I transformed before? Do you care about these?" After that, he put the bottle to his mouth. He slapped his thigh. "Wait, I'll get it for you." Wang Qiushui put down the bottle. "By the way, I want apple flavor." When he was about to reach the kitchen, Qiushui also came out. "I want orange flavor." He glanced at Qiushui and then said, "Did your sister let you drink juice?" Qiushui secretly glanced around. "It's okay, my sister is not here. As long as you don't say it, she won't know." Wang Qiushui smiled. "I know, if I tell your sister." Qiushui hurriedly ran to Wang Qiushui and massaged her with her little hands. "Sister Qiushui is so good to me, she will definitely not tell, right?" Wang Qiushui nodded with satisfaction. "Well, that's about right." He was too lazy to look at the two funny guys, and looked at the little spider. "Do you want it? Give you a can of beer?" The little spider was stunned for a moment, then smiled with his eyes narrowed, and nodded frantically. He shook his head. "Why do you have an alcoholic?" After saying that, he walked into the kitchen. When he came out, the three of them were already sitting in a row, as if they were waiting for dinner. He walked over and put down the bottles one by one. "Your beer, your orange juice, your apple juice, and my mango juice." The bottle was almost finished, and now everyone was drinking. It would look a bit strange if he didn't drink it alone, so he simply took out another bottle. Then, the three of them and the spider took a sip of the juice at the same time, and then let out an "ah," feeling cool and refreshing. The little spider put his fangs into the bottle, took a sip, and then looked at him with a surprised look. He nodded. "This is pineapple beer. The alcohol content is relatively low. You won't get drunk. Is it delicious?" The little spider nodded vigorously, and then put his fangs in again. Qiushui looked at the bottle of pineapple beer curiously and asked, "Is it beer or juice? Can I drink it?" He replied, "Of course it's beer. Children can't drink alcohol." Qiushui said oh, and didn't ask any more questions. They were drinking happily when the door of the training room suddenly opened, and Qiushui came out, sweating all over. Qiushui stopped immediately, looking at a loss. Qiushui glanced at her sister, then went to the bathroom to change clothes. After a while, she went to the kitchen to get a bottle of juice, and sat on the sofa. Qiushui asked carefully, "Sister, are you angry?" Qiushui shook her head. "What's there to be angry about?" Qiushui replied, "Didn't you always stop me from drinking juice?" Qiushui sighed, "Drinking juice is not good for your health, so I don't let you drink too much, but it doesn't matter if you drink a little occasionally." Qiushui nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. Wang Qiushui said, "Life in the doomsday is hard enough, why bother so much? Being happy is the most important thing." He nodded, picked up the bottle, cheers. The four of them toasted together, and Spider-Man couldn't lift it, so he could only stare blankly at the side. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318 Survivor Hunter arrives. In the next few days, the car just wandered around the streets, cleaning up zombies. As for the little spider, its nocturnal nature was gradually awakening, and it would go out to kill zombies at night to fill its stomach. However, most zombies did not move much at night, which did make it easier for it to hunt. And it never stayed outside for long, and would come back after eating, and still be full of energy the next day. So, everyone was no longer surprised by this. It was okay at the beginning, but after resting for several days in a row, Wang Qiushui began to feel bored. "Are we going to stay in the car every day? How about you find me something to do? I'm almost bored to death." He put his hand on Wang Qiushui's waist and smiled. "Since you are so bored, why don't you do it like us?" Wang Qiushui rolled his eyes at him. "Be serious." "I'm serious. I felt tired fighting zombies every day before, and now I don't have to do it, and I feel bored again. It's too hard for me." He responded, "It's been a week since we came back from Brothers Opao. A week is enough time for those survivors to come here and set various traps. I estimate that we may meet them in the next 2 days. Wang Qiushui's eyes lit up. "Doesn't that mean we can fight again?" He was speechless. The opponent this time is not simple. Although their strength may not be that good, I'm worried that they will get a lot of mines and rocket launchers and other things. If we meet any of them, there will be no good results. Wang Qiushui nodded. "Even if we don't fight them, it's almost time to implement your plan. By then, we can at least fight against level 4 zombies." "I haven't fought against level 4 zombies yet." He sighed. "If your face wasn't still the same, I would have suspected that you were possessed by Zillan. How did you become so belligerent?" Wang Qiushui said with a bitter face. "I'm almost bored to death, and only fighting can kill time. By the way, do you think there are still movies or novels stored in those computers? Let's go download some and bring them back." He shook his head. If it was in the past, it would be possible. In the past, everyone was a downloader, and there were stores that specialized in helping people download movies, novels, and music. There were usually a lot of inventory in the computers, and they could just pull them directly to their phones. Now it's impossible. Everyone is used to watching directly on the computer, and are generally too lazy to download. Unless we can find the servers of those companies, otherwise, the cost effectiveness is too low, and many computers may not be able to get a few movies. Wang Qiushui sighed. "Forget it. The experience points now cannot be squandered like this. When we settle down in the future, I must get all the things in those computers out. A world without entertainment is too boring." He smiled. "Well, we can start doing this when we return to our hometown. Then we will go and scan all the computers in the city." Wang Qiushui looked back at him. "Speaking of which, when are we going back?" He smiled. "Why, are you in a hurry to go back to see your parents?" Wang Qiushui's face flushed slightly. "I'm just a little tired of this kind of life, and I want to settle down as soon as possible." Although you and I are both strong and have a certain degree of security, we are still fighting hard after all, and accidents may happen at any time. He hugged Wang Qiushui and sighed. Yeah, I know. It's almost done. We'll kill those survivors next and help Zilan reach level 4. Then we'll go to the base to kill them, asked Man and the Cannon brother, and see if we can get some poultry and grain seeds. Then, we'll go home. We can build a steel wall to keep all the zombies out, so that we can be self-sufficient inside. You can also have children for me, and we'll raise the children together. Wang Qiushui's face turned even redder. Who wants to have children for you? I never said that. Hearing this, he suddenly said, is that so? Then I'll find someone else. Anyway, with my current conditions, there must be many women who are willing to do so, and maybe they will even rush to have babies for me. Wang Qiushui twisted his hand on his waist. Say it again. He hurriedly shouted, it hurts. It hurts. I was wrong. I was just talking casually. I only like you. Why would I look for someone else? Wang Qiushui still didn't let go. At this time, his face suddenly changed. Stop playing. Something's wrong. Wang Qiushui frowned, thinking that he was acting, but thinking that he seemed to have never joked about this. He let go of his hand and asked, what's wrong? He didn't answer, but directly turned on the scanner in the car, which showed that there was a group of people on the nearby building. These should be the survivors who came to chase them. After thinking about it, he didn't choose to fight back, nor did he take any measures, but turned the car around and ran back, and started to accelerate. This car has the best driving technology and the most efficient energy. If it accelerates, those people will definitely not be able to catch up. Moreover, the glass of this car is the kind that you can see outside from the inside, but not from the outside, so those people can't be sure that he is in the car, and they may not necessarily catch up. Wang Qiushui came over with the hammer of the earth and asked, what's the matter? Do you want me to do it? He came back to his senses. No, they can't catch up with us, and I'm not going to fight with them. Just now, the car should have accidentally triggered their minds. It seems that they have already set a trap. If he had not suddenly received the information that the car was damaged, he would not have noticed that there was an ambush nearby. After all, those hostile people and zombies are also displayed with red dots. However, the recent fusion is still effective. Even though it was hit by a wave of mines, the car was still not damaged, and it was repaired immediately. Wang Qiushui didn't quite believe it. Are you sure it's a mine? Let alone vibration just now. I didn't even notice any movement. He smiled. You can't feel any movement in this car. This is good. At least you won't be injured by the shock wave of the explosion. Wang Qiushui nodded, and then asked, are you sure you don't want to kill them? With Zilan's invisibility and my extreme speed, it should be easy to sneak over and kill their entire team. He shook his head and smiled. There is no need to take such a risk. Do you remember my previous plan? Let them jump around for a while, and then give them a big gift in 2 days, so that they will regret going against us. Wang Qiushui thought for a while. Okay, I believe they will be very happy when they receive this gift. Unfortunately, we probably won't be able to see their happiness. Chapter 319. Hunters gather. In the next few days, they encountered several waves of survivors, but they managed to escape successfully every time. There was no way. The advantage of the vehicle was there. It could resist and run, and those people could never catch up. Of course, repairs require materials, and acceleration requires energy. But for the time being, it is enough, just as it can reduce the weight of the car body, and there is no need to worry about energy. Qiushui naturally knew about this, and she had not spoken much in the past few days, and even stayed in the practice room all day. She seemed to be accumulating a terrifying power, just waiting for the time to erupt. He couldn't help but sigh. I almost thought I saw those Grandmaster level figures in the movies. This aura is so terrifying. Wang Qiushui nodded in agreement. I don't know how powerful she will be when she completely erupts. Qiushui added, sister is the most powerful. Wang Qiushui looked at Qiushui. What about me? My current level is higher than your sister. Qiushui tilted her head and thought for a while, then said, you are the second most powerful. Wang Qiushui grinned and said, I'll give you another chance. If your answer doesn't satisfy me, I'll tell your sister if you secretly drink juice again. Qiushui had a horrified expression on her face, and then she hesitated for a long time before finally saying, "You are as powerful as your sister." Wang Qiushui then said, "You barely passed." He watched from the side and shook his head. "Another one succumbs to your tyranny. It's too difficult for someone so young to speak against their conscience." However, he couldn't say whether Zilan or Wang Qiushui was more powerful. After all, Zilan's aura was so strong that, if she continued to accumulate it, she might be able to surpass her level. However, aura is like a saying, one strike is strong, the second strike is weak, and the third strike is exhausted. Therefore, Zilan's first strike should be the strongest and the only strike, and the latter should return to normal level, or even worse than before due to excessive consumption. Wang Qiushui rolled his eyes at him when he heard it. He disappeared directly in the carriage and said before leaving, "I'll go out and see the situation." In the past few days, the number of survivors has gradually increased. It seems that the reward is still generous enough, otherwise it would not attract so many people. However, there is no doubt that these people can't catch them. They have enough supplies. If there is anything that is relatively lacking, it is that the zombie virus crystals are relatively lacking, but the survivors will not know. Therefore, the survivors tried their best to set traps with food and various scarce supplies, but none of them worked. This also puzzled the survivors. Obviously, food is so important in the end of the world, why don't those few people even look at it? You know, in some places, where food is scarce, a cookie can buy a life. Those survivors did not think about chasing, although they were also surprised that all the cars on the street disappeared, but at least the empty streets gave them the opportunity to drive fast. Then, they sent the best driver, used the best modified car, and tried their best to chase, but they couldn't even get a whiff of the car's exhaust, and the other party disappeared in a short while. As for the landmines, let alone, they couldn't figure it out. In the past, these powerful landmines would not only blow the car into pieces, but at least overturn the car. But the ordinary car was not hurt at all, and it could even be said that it ran directly over the landmine. He looked at the red dot displayed on the scanner and shook his head. These people are really unwilling to give up, and they are surrounding us again. However, it seems that everyone should be here. I don't seem to have seen any new survivors in the past 2 days. Maybe it's time to close a net. In the past few days, he has been wandering around nearby. Once he was chased, he would run away and then come back again after escaping, just because he was worried that these survivors would not be able to find him. At the same time, this way, the survivors can be gathered together and caught in one fell swoop. He was not going to give up any of these guys who wanted his life. Then, he returned to the carriage. Wang Qiushui was about to come up to deal with him, and he said directly, "Don't play around, it's almost time." Wang Qiushui saw that he looked serious, so he nodded. At this time, Qiushui also walked out of the practice room, her voice a little hoarse. "Are you ready to start?" He nodded. Wang Qiushui then asked, "What about the location? Is it here?" He replied, "Yes, this place is far away from the sea, which can reduce the possibility of attracting zombies from the sea." Qiushui nodded. "What about the details?" He explained, "After I wear the title, I will wander around here for a while, and when the zombies are almost here, I will go out and attract the attention of the survivors. Then, you will support me and let the survivors fight the zombies. Then we will choose one of the zombies according to the situation and take it to another place to kill it." Wang Qiushui looked at him. "Are you going to attract the attention of the survivors, or to show off? Aren't you afraid of being blown to ashes by their rocket launcher?" He smiled and said, "It's to show off, but it's also to attract their attention. Otherwise, they will probably run away early. Besides, without me, they are more likely to hide instead of attacking when facing high-level zombies. Once they find that the high-level zombies are also targeting me, they will have to make a choice. Either kill me first, or kill those high-level zombies. If they really don't want to do it, we can wait until we are free, and then come back to deal with them. Anyway, they will definitely not be able to escape." Qiushui nodded. "What you said does make sense, but if we really want to implement it, there will still be great risks." He waved his hand. Unless they are prepared to take a corpse back, the risk is not very big. Besides, they are not in the same group. Even if I surrender obediently, they have to discuss how to divide it. Maybe, just because of this, they can fight. Wang Qiushui thought for a while. If you say so, there is no problem. By the way, what ability are you going to use later? In the past few days, he had not chosen any ability, because a fight could happen at any time. At this time, when Wang Qiushui asked him, he smiled and said, considering that those guys might break my legs with guns and destroy my mobility, I'd better choose extreme speed. Otherwise, I would like to use invisibility and suddenly disappear in front of them. It's exciting just to think about it. After saying that, he directly obtained Wang Qiushui's extreme speed ability. Chapter 320 The battle begins. Then, he wore the title of 10,000 Corpses Slayer. As expected, there was also a time limit, and he could not take off the title within the specified time. He turned to look at Wang Qiushui and the others. The time is not 15 minutes, but 20 minutes, 5 minutes more than before. But fortunately, it is within an acceptable range. In fact, he had guessed it before, but he could not be sure until now. After all, this is a higher level title, and it is normal to take a little longer. Wang Qiushui frowned. 5 minutes, it's not long, but it's not short either. The opponent is a level 4 zombie. Not to mention 5 minutes, even 1 minute is likely to cause trouble. Qiushui nodded in agreement. If that doesn't work, we can only find a way to delay time. I should be able to delay a level 4 zombie. He waved his hand. No, if it really doesn't work, we still have the car. With the speed and resistance of this car, it shouldn't be a problem to delay it for a while. Wang Qiushui then asked, then what should we do now? He thought for a while. The three of us will find a place to get off, and then the car will continue to circle with those people. Qiushui, you take me to the tallest building nearby, and then you two will hide nearby, and pick me up at the critical moment. We can only improvise with what happens next. Wang Qiushui responded, wouldn't it be a bit dangerous to stand at the highest point? After all, your opponents include not only humans, but also those level 4 zombies. If there are animals among them, such as spiders or birds, you will be in great danger. Qiushui nodded in agreement. If an accident really happens, it will be difficult for us to rescue in time. He shook his head. Only by standing at the highest point can I better grasp the movements of those zombies. Besides, there may be snipers among those people. And if the sniper wants to shoot me at the highest point, he must find a suitable position. This takes time, and it also helps me delay time in disguise. Wang Qiushui responded, okay, let's wait a while, and get ready to set off. At this time, Qiushui on the side interrupted and said, can you open the window? Little spider and I can't see anything in the car. He smiled and said, we are fighting hard outside, and you are watching the show inside. I really envy you. But I have prepared what you said a long time ago. After speaking, he snapped his fingers. Then, the iron sheet around the carriage was all retracted, revealing a thick layer of glass underneath. And all these glasses are transparent, and you can clearly see the situation outside. This is also what he has come up with in the past few days. In this way, even if you are in the car, you will not be completely unaware of the situation outside. Even if you are besieged by zombies, you can always know the movements of the zombies. As for why cameras and projections are not used, the main reason is that the cameras are too conspicuous. If there are several cameras hung on the body of a car, others will see it at a glance. It is too high profile and easy to attract other people's attention. But now it is much more low-key. Qiushui looked up and shouted, brother-in-law Qiushui is so nice. Wang Qiushui seemed to be very pleased with this sentence and laughed directly. 10 minutes later, the three of them disappeared directly in the car and appeared in the car. Just at this time, the car came to a corner, so it suddenly braked. The three people got out of the car directly, and then the car instantly resumed the speed just now and continued to drive forward. It must be said that the performance of this car is good. Whether it is sudden braking or instant acceleration, it did not make any noise, and the people in the car did not feel anything at all. After a while, the people behind caught up, but seeing their angry look, it was obvious that they were about to be unable to bear it. The three of them hid upstairs and watched the cars whiz away. Wang Qiushui asked curiously, if the three of us hide here like this, will we really not be discovered? He shook his head. These survivors don't have scanners like us that can detect the presence of humans. The detectors in their hands can only detect the energy reactions of zombies that appear nearby. So, as long as you wait for them to be lured away by the car, you will not be discovered if you transform again. Qiushui nodded and asked, by the way, what about the zombies? He glanced at the scanner. There are a total of 5 level 4 zombies. No, there are only 4 left now. One of them clearly entered the scanning range just now, but I don't know how it disappeared again. It should have run away. Fortunately, we are a bit far from the beach, and there is only one in the sea. But it still cannot be scanned. It seems that this is the talent of aquatic creatures. If it hadn't appeared in the scanner occasionally, I would have thought it was gone. As for the remaining 3, 2 of them are very slow, probably tank type. The fastest one is the farthest away, so it should have enough time. Wang Qiushui worriedly said, I don't know what the one in the sea is. It won't really run ashore, or cause a big flood or something. He shook his head. I don't know, but if it dares to come ashore, it will definitely be the easiest one to deal with. There is a secret weapon in the car to deal with it. He was talking about the water purifier. If the other party really dared to come ashore, then wait for the hammer. Qiushui asked, then should we start the action now? He glanced at the position of the car. Well, get ready to act. Those people are smart. They actually united to surround our car, but just happened to reveal a flaw. This is to force our car into the trap. If it weren't for the scanner, we wouldn't even be able to find it until we were driven into the trap. Wang Qiushui asked the next question for Qiushui. What should we do? He smiled. Although our car is very resistant, since they want to play like this, of course they can't do it as they wish. Besides, they think they can force us into the trap in this way. It's too naive. Let them see the consequences of being hit by an overweight car. After speaking, a boom explosion was heard in the distance. Wang Qiushui asked quickly, what happened? He replied, the car was hit and flew away, then exploded in the air. Our car is coming this way, and we should get ready for action. Qiushui worriedly said, will the collision and explosion just now scare Zillion? He shook his head. It should be okay. I just blocked the front part of the car, so she can't see it. As for the explosion in the back, it can't be heard in the car. Qiushui nodded. That's good. Let's start. Then, the two took the transformation needles and began to transform. Chapter 321 Appearance. Soon, an ordinary car whizzed past. The speed almost made people think that someone was racing on the street, and it was the kind that didn't care about life. But the driving skills of the car were very good, and it could always turn smoothly at the corners, as if there was the best driver in the world. After a while, some cars behind followed up in a hurry, and the roar seemed to be a true portrayal of the mood of the people in the car. However, even if they stepped on the accelerator, they still couldn't catch up with the car just now. Moreover, they didn't dare to chase too closely, because one of them was directly hit and exploded. At this time, a voice suddenly came from the side. Driver, wait for me, I haven't got in the car yet. Although those cars felt strange, how could there be people in this place, and what kind of mess they were talking about, they still didn't stop. After all, whether it was an ordinary survivor or something else, it didn't matter, they were coming for the people in the car in front. Seeing that no one paid attention to him, the voice shouted again, wait, isn't it me you are looking for? I'm right here. The cars that were rushing forward were about to leave the road and turn into the next intersection, but suddenly they all stopped. After a while, many people got out of the car and looked up, some with binoculars in their hands. After looking for a while, those people confirmed that the other party was one of the targets, so they pointed their guns at the person on the roof. Although they were also curious about how the other party suddenly appeared, it did not prevent them from wanting to take action. The reward for one target is a little less, but it is better than nothing. He stood on the roof, watching the actions of those people, raised his hands directly, and slowly backed away, hiding behind the wall, just in case he would not be hit by those people. Then, he shouted again, it's pointless for you to act like this. The base must want to capture me alive. If I'm killed, I won't be worth much. Besides, there are so many of you here. One person with one gun is enough to shoot me into a sieve. How will the spoils be divided? Will the shooters take a piece of meat back? Do you think the base will recognize it when the time comes? When those people heard this, they looked at each other. What he said did make sense. There were at least a dozen teams present. If they could take the reward alone, it would be fine. If it was divided into more than a dozen, then the reward would only be average. So, they immediately began to be on guard, so as not to be shot by someone. Everyone had walked out of the apocalypse step by step, so they naturally knew how common this kind of thing was. At this time, one of the bald guys stood up and said, "Don't listen to his nonsense. He is clearly trying to sow discord and wants us to fight first. I think what we should do now is to catch him first, and then use him to catch the other three. When the time comes, we can slowly discuss how to distribute the things." Another long-haired girl stood up and said, "I agree with what you said first, but I disagree with the second part. When it comes to catching people, it depends on your ability. Whoever catches them will own them. Don't talk about distribution. If someone still wants to snatch them at that time, the worst that can happen is that we will fight to the death." The bald guy frowned, but said nothing more. He waved his hand and said, "Then it depends on your ability." Another thin guy stood up and said, "I don't think there is any point in arguing here. Maybe the man has already run away. He suddenly ran out, maybe to attract our attention, delay time, and prevent us from chasing the car in front." He showed his head again at this time. "By the way, I guess you must have thought I ran away, but actually I didn't. I was waiting for you to fight." The thin man's face suddenly turned ugly. He looked around and suspected that there was a bug nearby. The big bald man winked and said nothing. Then his men followed him and rushed forward, aiming at the building. As long as they could quietly get to the top of the building, the other party would definitely not be able to escape. Seeing this, the others stopped arguing and rushed forward. He then stuck his head out again. "Don't come over here. I can't beat so many of you alone. It's better for everyone to keep a safe distance. Besides, I don't recommend you to stay too far away from your car, otherwise it's easy to be hit." Those people looked back and saw that the car that had run away came back and hit another car as if provoking it. The car that was hit was instantly deformed. Fortunately, there was no one in the car, otherwise it would have been hit to death. Then, the car stopped again, but the front of the car was pointed in the direction of them. With the distance between the two and the acceleration of the car, they definitely didn't have time to dodge. The thin man's face became serious. He looked at the nearest building, thinking about the possibility of survival. If he could rush into the building before the car hit him, he might be able to survive. However, even if that happened, more than half of his men would die, or even all of them. It would be a question whether he could return to the base alive. The bald man was annoyed. What does he want? He can kill us, but he doesn't. He is not afraid of us, but he wants to keep a distance from us. Could it be that he wants to play with us before killing us? At this time, a member of the survivor team directly carried a rocket launcher and fired at the roof. "I can't stand it anymore. At worst, we will die together." With a whoosh, the rocket launcher was launched, blowing the roof into pieces. The rubble and debris fell directly and hit the ground, but there was no human body fragments among them. The big bald man and others changed their faces and looked at the car. After seeing that the car did not hit them, they breathed a sigh of relief. Then, they all retreated and distanced themselves from the survivors to avoid being accidentally injured. At this time, he poked his head out from the roof of the next house again. "Really, it's a good thing that I reacted quickly, otherwise I would have been blown to pieces by you. But I'm a generous person and I won't bother with you." With Wang Qiushui and Qiushui acting as his spies, he naturally knew the situation below. However, for safety reasons, the two did not dare to get too close to those people. Who knows if those people have some strange abilities? The big bald head shouted directly, "What do you want?" He didn't believe that the other party would be so generous and treat a group of people who wanted to kill him as if nothing had happened. Either the other party didn't want to kill, or they couldn't kill. But judging from the current situation, the former possibility is more likely. Chapter 322 Coincidence. He glanced at the scanner, and the three zombies would take some time to arrive. As for the one on the beach, it seemed to have reached the shore. It seemed that it was not a crustacean zombie, otherwise it would have landed long ago. Moreover, it would take a few minutes to take off the title, so he had to delay for a while. Facing the question of the big bald man, he directly responded, "You have been chasing me for several days, and now I appear in front of you, but you still ask me what I want. This doesn't sound right." The big bald man's doubts deepened. Now he could either kill the other party directly, or choose to retreat. However, they had spent so much manpower and material resources this time, and if they retreated like this, they would lose a lot. So he gritted his teeth and quietly made a gesture, and a sniper standing behind with a sniper rifle quietly left. The other teams were not fools either. They soon noticed it and signaled the good players in their team to leave. Anyway, they had already agreed in advance that whoever caught it first would own it, and now it was time for everyone to rely on their own abilities. Those people also had their own abilities. After leaving the team, they quickly disappeared into the nearby buildings. It was impossible to see where they went with the naked eye. However, he had a scanner, so he knew exactly where these people were. However, these snipers were still moving quickly, and they probably hadn't found a suitable position yet, so he didn't move for the time being, just pretending that he knew nothing. He poked his head out again and said, "By the way, I heard that the base had made preparations to deal with zombies a long time ago, so there should be a lot of good things in there. You came all the way here, didn't the base send you a few tanks as vehicles? If you have that stuff, it will be much safer. Driving a tank is every man's dream, and his car can integrate various vehicles. Even if it can't fire shells like a tank, as long as it has a tank shell, it's cool enough. So, these people have rocket launchers, but they don't even have tanks, which still disappoints him." The bald man responded, as if he was chatting, "Tanks consume too much fuel, we can't afford them. By the way, your car is pretty good, and the fuel tank is pretty big, can it withstand your consumption?" If he didn't know that the bald man was the first to send out the sniper, he would really believe the bald man's lies and thought that the bald man was willing to chat with him. However, he still said, "It's the same for you. You have a lot of fuel. You chased me for several days without stopping." At this time, the headset worn by the bald man received the information that the sniper was in place and shouted again, "We can't compare with you. The fuel we brought is almost used up. It's a problem whether we can go back smoothly. By the way, where did you get all the cars and fuel on the street here?" This is a way of asking questions to attract the other party's attention, so as to give the sniper more time to aim. You know, no matter how powerful a sniper is, he can't do it like in the game, just raise the gun and shoot, and hit the target every time. He suddenly stood up and said with a smile, "It's no fun for you to play like this." The next second, a bullet shot out and went straight through his body, but there was no blood. Then several bullets were fired from different directions, all of which went through his body, but there was still no blood. Everyone below was stunned. What was going on? The big bald man asked directly, "How is it? Did you hit it?" The sniper was silent for a few seconds, and then replied, "It doesn't look like it hit." Sure enough, when the big bald man looked again, the other party's figure was no longer on the roof. He couldn't help but frowned. What kind of ability is this? Is it a prophet? However, even if it is a prophet, it can't be avoided so easily, and it's at the most critical moment. In fact, he didn't expect it to have such a big effect. He had already prepared for being shot. Anyway, he had protective gear to block it and healing medicine, so he would only be injured at most. Who knew that the speed was so fast, and he activated his ability at the moment when those snipers stopped, so it just happened to cause such a scene. Even if he were to do it again, he was not sure he could achieve the same effect. The next second, his figure appeared on the roof of the next house again. "Big bald head, you are not honest enough." The big bald head snorted coldly, "Even if you run fast, so what? I want to see who is faster, you or the bullet." After that, all his men pointed their guns at the roof. The thin man reminded him earlier, "Aren't you afraid of being hit by a car?" The big bald head sneered, "I don't know where the car has gone. Maybe it has abandoned him." The thin man looked back and saw that the car was gone, and there was no trace of it nearby. So, he waved his hand and his men pointed all kinds of weapons at the roof. The other teams followed suit. He glanced at them from the corner of his eye. So many guns and rockets. Do you want me to die without a complete body? The big bald man sneered. Compared to catching you as bait, I now think it would be better to kill you. Maybe your companions will come to kill me to avenge you, and then I can catch them. However, since they will abandon you, I think this possibility is not very high. He replied, yes, then there is no need to kill me. The big bald man shook his head. No, killing you can weaken their power. At least it can let me vent. I have had enough these days. After saying that, he waved his hand. The big bald man's men fired together, and at the same time, those people also fired, as if they had discussed it. Just as the bullets and rockets were whistling past, suddenly a water column flew from a distance and hit them. After being washed by the water column for a while, the bullets and rockets were all silenced and fell to the ground. He had already left, but he returned to the roof at a very fast speed and stood up with his back supported. Come on, I'll stand here and let you hit me. Can you hit me? Those people fell silent. The guns and cannons in their hands felt a little hot. It was tiring to continue aiming at the other side, but it was embarrassing to put them down. They were in a dilemma. Wang Qiushui asked curiously, where did the water column come from just now? Is there a secret backup plan you have? He shook his head slightly and replied, it should have been shot by the zombies on the beach, and I just happened to block those attacks for me. Wang Qiushui frowned. Do all water zombies like to spray water? But this is too much of a coincidence. He smiled. There is no coincidence in the world. As for that zombie, I guess it might be a geoduck. Wang Qiushui asked, what do you mean? He replied, haven't you seen the video of geoduck spraying water? It can spray very far. Wang Qiushui was silent for a moment. I always feel that you are talking about something that is not suitable for children. He waved his hands repeatedly. No, I don't have it. It's a pity that I can't go online now. Otherwise I could show it to you. Chapter 323 Gift. The people below were carrying guns and not moving, and they were almost exhausted. Finally, a man carrying a rocket launcher could not help asking, boss, what should we do now? The bald man came to his senses and looked at the man on the roof, who was constantly making small movements. It was obvious that he did not take them seriously. So he said angrily, keep firing. I want to see how many such attacks he can withstand. As long as we succeed once, we can kill him. Besides, his water should be taken from the sea, and it must be a great consumption for him. He definitely can't hold on for long. The bald man's men nodded and prepared to shoot again. The others looked at their bosses with inquiring eyes. The bosses of other teams were immediately in a dilemma. If they didn't shoot, they would not be able to compete with the bald man for the spoils. Besides, the man on the roof was too arrogant. If they didn't shoot, they would not be able to get rid of their anger. However, if they shot, it would be like they were being led by the nose by the bald man. The bald man became the one giving orders, and all of them had to listen to the bald man's orders. Finally, everyone aimed at the roof and fired again. As the bullets whizzed away, a column of water shot over again. The people below were suddenly desperate. How could they play this game? There was no way to play. Even guns and cannons were useless. Could they win by just using cold weapons? At this time, the big bald man suddenly said, no, that water column was not controlled by him. That water column was actually heading towards him. We were just misled just now. Everyone looked up and saw that the water column really fell on the position where the man was standing. Then the bullets and rockets shot onto the roof, blowing up the entire roof, but the man was still nowhere to be seen. Then, he appeared on the roof of the building next to him, and then waved his hand. The time is up. I'm done with you. Goodbye. After saying that, he jumped and actually jumped directly from the roof. At the same time, the car that had disappeared long ago suddenly appeared at the end of the street, turned around, and drove backwards towards this side, seemingly to greet the man. The subordinates asked again, boss, what should we do this time? Shoot the people or the car? The bald man waved his hand and said, of course we should shoot the car. People are falling in the air at such a fast speed. How can we aim? Besides, there are other people in the car. Just shoot it. The car is very hard. As long as we can overturn it, the people inside can't escape. This time, the opinions of the other bosses were very consistent, and they all waved their hands. Then, various bullets and even rockets were fired directly at the car, which was comparable to the big scenes in the movies. Some bullets hit the car windows, some hit the wheels, and some hit the car body, making a ding-dong sound. The rockets even dragged a long tail flame, whistling towards the car, and then exploded with a boom. The explosion directly caused a large cloud of smoke, and even the cement on the nearby road was blown everywhere, completely covering the car. Everyone stopped and waited for the final result. If the car had been blown up or overturned, they might have caused an explosion. If they fired again, and they would only get a few bodies, and the reward would be greatly reduced. Suddenly, the smoke dispersed to both sides, and the car rushed out unscathed, without even a bullet mark. Those people suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, as if they thought this was normal, but at the same time they felt desperate, as if guns and cannons could not deal with the other party. So what should they do? At the same time, some smart people had quietly retreated to both sides. Otherwise, if the car hit them, there would be no way to stop it. Seeing that he could not stop the car, the big bald head looked at him again. But when he fell halfway, it was as if he was caught by something, and he did not fall down anymore, but fell down at a constant speed. Although the speed was a bit slow, at least it was safe, and he would not fall to death. By the time the big bald head reacted, he had already fallen to the ground, and the car had stopped in front of him, just in time to help him block the bullet. He opened the trunk, and took out a gun. "You guys just beat me for so long. It's time for me to give you a gift." Those people were shocked, and ran to both sides, looking for a place to hide. They didn't have the ability to block bullets, and being shot would basically mean death. However, until they all hid, they didn't hear the man shoot. At this time, a beep sound suddenly came from someone's body. The big bald man couldn't help but feel annoyed. Whose alarm clock is ringing? Are you afraid that the other party doesn't know our location? The subordinate was stunned for a moment, then suddenly took out a detector from his body. "Boss, it's not the alarm clock, it's the detector that's ringing. It shows that several high-level zombies have appeared nearby. Judging from the energy intensity, it is very likely to have reached level 4, or even higher." The big bald man waved his hand. "This broken detector is useless. The water column and he were caught in midair just now, which obviously means that there are high-level zombies nearby, but they haven't been detected. What's the use of telling us, now that there are high-level zombies?" The subordinate thought about it and said, "No, boss, this detector was developed by the base, and I haven't heard of any problems." When the big bald man heard that his subordinate dared to refute, he immediately scolded, "Are you the boss, or am I the boss? Besides, how many zombies have we seen along the way here? The zombies in this place are almost extinct. You tell me, is it possible that a few high-level zombies suddenly ran out?" The subordinate didn't dare to speak anymore. Suddenly, there was a sound of running behind them, like a giant moving. The bald man frowned. "What's that sound?" Someone had already turned back, and said in a trembling voice, "Boss, a high-level zombie." The bald man looked back and was stunned. He said quickly, "Don't shoot. We can't beat this thing. Now we just hope that they can't see us, and are just passing by. Generally speaking, as long as they don't make any noise, the zombies won't notice them, so they can avoid being attacked to the greatest extent." Having said that, the bald man still quietly retreated. What if? At this time, a burst of gunfire suddenly sounded, hitting the high-level zombie directly, but only splashing a burst of black blood. Soon, the wound was repaired. However, the high-level zombie was attacked for no reason and immediately looked like he was going to run away. The bald guy frowned and yelled, "Who is shooting randomly?" Everyone looked at the team that fired the rocket launcher first. The people in that team looked innocent, looked at each other, and finally shook their heads. At this time, he shouted directly, "Big bald guy, this is my gift to you. Bye." After that, he fired another round of bullets, then got in the car and left. Chapter 324 Long-haired cat. Originally, he really wanted to let the bald guy and the high-level zombies fight for him, but since the bald guy and his men hid directly and had no intention of attacking the zombies, he had to help them. The two zombies running in the front were tank-like, with very tall bodies. This kind of zombies usually don't have much brains. They only remember that they were shot just now, and it doesn't matter who shot them. After hearing what he said, the bald guy's face turned green, and he shouted directly, "We've been tricked, all transform. Also, use up all the bullets and other things, don't stop." The men immediately began to transform into zombies, and fired at the two zombies, and rocket launchers were also fired. Some other teams that reacted a little slower were slapped against the wall before they could escape, and turned into a pile of sauce. Soon, dense gunshots rang out, and from time to time there was the sound of rocket launchers whistling, which was very lively. They stood in the carriage and watched the scene behind. Wang Qiushui laughed and said, "Your trick is too mean," but they actually started shooting. He replied, "Those two zombies don't care who fired the gun. As long as they see guns in their hands, they will naturally regard them as enemies. So, they either shoot or wait to die. They have no other choice." Wang Qiushui nodded, and then felt strange. Why didn't the two zombies use their breath to suppress it? In that way, they wouldn't be beaten. I saw those rocket launchers fired and blew their bodies to pieces. He thought for a while, maybe they forgot. After all, there are not many things their brains can remember. Qiushui suddenly asked, "You said there were 3 zombies just now, and now 2 are blocked. What about the other one? Are you sure it will follow?" He nodded. "There is another one. It has already followed, right in front of us." Wang Qiushui widened his eyes. "No, aren't there still 2? He turned around. "I'm talking about the front of the car." Wang Qiushui and the other turned around, but only saw a huge white claw slapping the front of the car. Qiushui was holding the little spider, and was so scared that she dared not make a sound. With a bang, the claw landed on the front of the car, and the front of the car was dented instantly. However, it still failed to smash the car, and even failed to overturn the car. The car suddenly stepped on the accelerator, knocked away the claw, and continued to rush forward. After leaving the claw, the car began to repair again, and soon the front of the car became the same as before. Everyone present breathed a sigh of relief. The pressure of the claw just now was too strong. Wang Qiushui recalled the appearance of the claw, and then asked, "Was that claw just now White Tiger that ran out of the zoo?" He shook his head and replied, "You will know when you look back." Several people turned around and saw a huge white animal following behind the car, running fast. The animal was covered with long white hair, and one claw was as big as a car, with huge fangs sticking out of its mouth. And it was not running normally, but more like jumping, and it could shorten a long distance with one jump. Sometimes, when it encounters an obstacle, it will even climb directly onto the wall, and then jump over it. Wang Qiushui swallowed his saliva. "Don't tell me, this is a mutant cat?" He nodded. "Didn't you see that there is no word Wang on its forehead? What else can it be besides a cat?" Qiushui asked. "Then when do we start?" He looked at the cat. "Don't worry, it's not very far from where we were just now. Run for a while. Moreover, cats are not like dogs, they are not good at long distance raids, so we can take this opportunity to consume its physical strength so that it will be easier to start later." At this moment, there was a sudden bang sound from the top of the head, and then you can see water drops sliding down to both sides. The roof of the car was also directly hit and dented, but it was slowly repairing. He frowned. "This damn geoduck, it shoots quite accurately. Unexpectedly, at the speed of the car, it can accurately predict." He was a little suspicious whether the zombie had shot the water column in advance and then aimed in the air for a long time before shooting. Qiushui asked curiously, "What geoduck?" They were just chatting in their minds, so Qiushui didn't know what they were talking about. However, she knew that there were zombies shooting water jets. Wang Qiushui responded. He just said that the zombie that fired the water jet was a geoduck, probably because that thing can shoot very far. He couldn't help but slap his forehead. "Why does it feel weird when you say that? Anyway, even if it's not a geoduck, it should be a similar shellfish. When they bury their bodies in the sand, they will spray water to spray out the sand inside." Qiushui nodded. "It sounds like that one is easier to deal with. Why not choose it?" He glanced at the scanner inside. Its figure will only appear on the scanner occasionally, and the sea is its home ground after all. We can't get anything good if we go there. If it dares to go ashore, I would have gone to deal with it long ago. Wang Qiushui looked at the big white cat and said heroically, "It's okay, this one is the same. Watch how I deal with it later." He thought about it and reminded, although the top speed is already very fast, the cat's reaction speed is faster. Generally speaking, the white-browed stilt spider is just a toy of the cat. Qiushui was shocked. Can't the little spider beat the cat? The little spider was even more surprised, staring with wide eyes, as if saying, "You think too highly of me. I'm so small, not even enough for a slap." Qiushui added, "I was just about to let the little spider go out and fight it." The little spider struggled desperately. This was a threat to its life. Wang Qiushui's heroic spirit disappeared immediately, and he looked at him. "What should we do? I should have chosen the 2 tanks earlier, at least I wouldn't have to get beaten. Besides, cat claws are very sharp, and its 2 long fangs are almost as good as those of a saber-toothed tiger. If it were to hit me, I doubt whether my protective gear would be able to withstand it." He smiled. "That's why we have to run for a while longer to consume its energy. Didn't you notice that it's not running as fast as before?" Wang Qiushui observed for a while and nodded. "It really is. It looks like it can't run any longer. But, could it have noticed it, and is conserving its energy?" He responded, "It doesn't matter, even if it's conserving its energy. As long as it's still running, its energy will still be consumed." Qiushui nodded and closed her eyes. "Call me when you start." Chapter 325 blocked. The car drove for a long time, and the title could be taken off long ago. The zombies in the sea still attacked the car relentlessly, but of course they still didn't achieve any results. The long-haired cat behind was already panting. If the car hadn't slowed down, it might not be able to keep up. He saw that it was almost time, so he drove the car into a small alley. This was a space he had carefully prepared, just enough for the cat to come in, but the space was not very large, and there were various restrictions on its movement. Watching the car drive directly in, the cat suddenly stopped and measured the alley with its whiskers on both sides. After confirming that it could enter, it rushed in. The car stopped at the end, and there was a wall in front. Although it could be directly hit, there was no need. He said directly, "Okay, the car has arrived at the station. All passengers please get off." Qiushui stood up holding Spider-Man. Spider-Man saw it and struggled frantically. This was not getting off the car. This was going to hell. He pushed Qiushui back to the sofa. "You two should stop joining in the fun. Stay in the car. It's safe. By the way, do you want to watch the battle later? It might be very scary." Qiushui replied, "Of course I will watch it. I'm not afraid." Little Spider breathed a sigh of relief. Finally he didn't have to go to die. Qiushui opened her eyes and got out of the car with the 2 of them. Across the way, the long-haired cat also stopped, staring with a pair of big blood-red eyes, with its tongue hanging out. If it wasn't known that it had just run a long distance and was panting, you would have thought it was looking at its prey. With a boom, the breath of the long-haired cat came over like a storm. Wang Qiushui was not to be outdone, and directly used his breath to fight back. At this time, a column of water suddenly fell over and hit the long-haired cat, causing its breath to pause for a moment, and it was directly pressed back several steps by Wang Qiushui. Looking again, the long-haired cat's fur had become tangled because of the seawater, and its body was even more wet. It was obviously angry about this inexplicable attack. It blew a breath in the direction of the water column, and then shook it off, shaking off all the water on its body. Fortunately, several people had already noticed it, and hid in the nearby building first. Otherwise, it would be splashed with dirty water. After all, the cat didn't know how long it hadn't taken a bath, so how clean could it be? "You said that the protective gear has a non-stick pan, and the dirty water won't stick to the body. Even if it doesn't stick to the body, it's disgusting." He thought about it, and took off the title directly. He was in a hurry just now, and forgot it for a while. Although the water column just hit the long-haired cat, it suffered a great loss. However, this thing is an uncertain factor after all. If it hits Wang Qiushui or Qiushui later, it may be fatal. After taking off the title, the red dot in the sea flashed twice, as if confirming something, and then disappeared and never appeared again. Naturally, the water column was not fired again. The long-haired cat was stunned for a moment and found that it had lost its target, so it turned around and prepared to leave. It had no interest in the people in front of it. It had just come here to pursue the goal of upgrading. Now that there was no target, it might as well go back and kill the 2 level 4 zombies just now. At least it could get one step closer to upgrading. Moreover, the 2 level 4 zombies were tank type, and they were not flexible at first glance, so they could only be played with by it, so it was not difficult to kill them. Of course, there was another reason, which was that it had just suffered a small loss from Wang Qiushui. Although there was no formal fight, it was still very cautious. There was no need to bite the hard bone when there was a simple opponent. However, the long-haired cat wanted to leave, and Wang Qiushui would naturally not let it do so. He walked out directly, and the aura on his body crushed the long-haired cat. On the other side, Qiushui also used invisibility to go around behind the long-haired cat, and with a long spear in his hand, a momentum of one man blocking the pass and 10,000 men unable to open it surged out. The long-haired cat looked at Wang Qiushui in front of him, and then looked at Qiushui behind him. In the end, it still did not choose to deal with Qiushui. The reason is very simple. The alley is too narrow, and it takes time for it to turn around. During the time of turning around, it is equivalent to exposing its body to Wang Qiushui behind it. Even if it successfully turns around, Wang Qiushui is still behind it, and it is difficult for it to defend itself. On the contrary, Qiushui's threat is much smaller. Even if Qiushui attacks from behind, it is not enough to be fatal. Wang Qiushui swung the hammer of the earth and moved her body. The next second, she disappeared from the spot and appeared in front of the long-haired cat, and the hammer of the earth also smashed out. He stood upstairs and looked down. This extreme speed is okay, but as soon as he finished speaking, the long-haired cat slapped it casually, and it was the first to arrive, and directly slapped Wang Qiushui back. At the same time, Qiushui also thrust his spear straight at the long-haired cat's anus. This is the only part without hair. The defense is the weakest, and it can directly stab the internal organs through this place. Although the zombie's internal organs are long gone, it is still possible to cause damage to the inside. Therefore, this can be said to be the best choice for attack. However, the long-haired cat seemed to have eyes on its back, and its tail suddenly hardened, smashing down like a steel whip. Qiushui frowned, quickly pulled back, and gave up this attack. Although there are protective gear, since the long-haired cat can attack with its tail, it means that it is prepared for defense. At that time, her attack may not be effective, and she will have to take a beating like Wang Qiushui. Wang Qiushui hit the wall with a bang, and then stood up again. Didn't you say that its physical strength was exhausted? Why is it still so reactive? He found a chair upstairs and sat down, and responded leisurely. This reaction is already slow, and the physical strength consumption just now is still effective. It's up to you next. Don't give it too much breathing time. As for not being able to beat the long-haired cat, he was not worried about that. After all, there is Wang Qiushui, a level 4, and Qiushui, a level 3, so he is at least half a level 4. With the help of armor and weapons, if they still can't win, then there is no need for them to kill zombies to level up. It is better to find a place to retire as soon as possible. Upon hearing this, Wang Qiushui clenched the hammer of the earth. Then let's fight it slowly. Anyway, we have physical strength medicine. I don't believe we can't outlast it. He nodded. Well, come on. I'm rooting for you. My small body can't stand it, so I'll just watch the battle first and join in later. Wang Qiushui didn't answer and rushed over again. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.